Yeah, jambalaya. But we'll just see where the discussion takes us. If it's awful, we won't do it again.
It's all going to work out.
It's all going to work out.
It's working out right now.
Yep.
Do you have on your bracelet or not? Is it going to be okay? And
sure, we can talk about it if you want, but in any case, we are live on YouTube, and so good evening, everyone. Skip was called away to a Logos World adventure today, and so I didn't get to prepare this session that I want to, and so I'm going to pass the baton over to Nick and ask Nick to be the MC for this evening. So go for it, Nick.
Okay, so we're just going to have some general discussion on a few different topics related to the aces in the tarot, and also the concept of adding a fifth suit. As we've talked about in the previous weeks, each of the suits represents one of the different 4 elements, and then also in modern iterations of the tarot, people have added a fifth suit to represent spirit or ether or the quintessence, whatever terminology you prefer. So as I said, we just have a few basic talking points, and Gilda, Samantha, I believe Raquel are all going to show a few visual pieces of information and do some talking. But before we do that, I think we all should go around and just say a few words about the concept of the fifth suit and the aces in general. So I'll go ahead and say what I have to say, and I think that it will probably be very similar to what everybody else has to say. The aces to me seem like in the short amount of time that I had to think about them before, they seem to always kind of carry the seed of everything that is to unfold in the subsequent cards. So it really makes me think of Jung's quote about the rhizome of the flower, and James Hillman's acorn theory, which essentially states that there are so many different tiny acorns that fall on the ground, and only really a few of them mature under the right conditions to become a full oak tree. But that in each one of those acorns that fall, everything is inherent in that acorn that it needs to have to become a full oak tree. So that certainly seems to be the case with each of the aces. The example that I gave in the pre-discussion was that I think, as with any group of people or any event or discussion, a spirit is kind of in the room to describe it abstractly. And I think that's very much the case when we all get together and have these discussions. As over time, we've gotten to know one another, figured out what works for one another, what doesn't, how we can work together, and so on. And in that, a certain spirit of our conversation seems to have been birthed. And I think going forward with those couple of points in mind is sheds a helpful light on the concept of the aces. So that's pretty much all that I have to say. And with that, I will turn it over to Samantha.
Thank you, Nick. So there's two topics going on here. So one is and I'm speaking to anyone who considers themselves a beginner of tarot right now on YouTube. And I think we might have some panelists who are, I'm not sure, but so the fifth tarot, which I lifted up when Nick was talking, is what he was referring to when he mentioned there's a new development in the world of tarot. So tarot normally has, as all of us have a sense, tarot, like playing cards, is divided into 4 suits, and they each represent, actually, you guys, I don't want to have a spoiler. We're going to be addressing this more next week. But so I just want to be clear, that's one topic, right? So when we say the 5th tarot or the 5th element, we're referring to this new development in the history of tarot. Now I'm going to put that away and address the other thing about the aces. So we're talking about the aces in the tarot, right? All representing, as Nick said, a seed, like an acorn that has all the genetic material of the oak tree. But acorns rarely become the oak tree, like I guess statistically, which I never knew until tonight. So this is really a metaphor for, we have a right to, we have free will as humans. So we can accept the gift that is implicit in each suit, or we can reject it. And as we'll see later, there are cards with 2 through 10 that represent, the different cards represent ways of either accepting that gift or rejecting that, and all the patterns as well as the random consequences of making that decision. So thank you. And I believe I will hand it off to Gilda. Are you interested in going next? Or you want to?
Okay. With reference to the aces, as has been said, yes, they are seeds. And we might be speaking later on about when they are reversed, which offers a different point of view. And we have this idea that the aces connect actually the 5th suit in their hidden form, because what we experience them as beginnings is already a form ready to accept it or not, as Samantha said, and become something, but it also carries the unformed potential always. And can we see the unformed potential? It is there. That it is, like Nick mentioned, is in the we space. And so we think that the aces, out of all the suit card, all the cards, represent the connection to the 5th element. And that's what I have to say about that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Skip, you want to go ahead?
Sure. I just want to emphasize that Dr. Jung spent most of his career talking about the process of individuation. And I have many times talked about individuation being like an oak tree, where all the information that goes into the oak tree is already there in the acorn. It's already there in the egg and the sperm, okay, in human development. And so what the tarot has always offered is ways of looking at different aspects of life. And so each ace represents the beginnings of consciousness about that aspect of life, I would suppose. But we always have to remember that you need all four aces in order to build a human being. And so when we talk about the 5th tarot is the quintessence, the 5th element, and the 5th element is the human being, is a human being. And so we're going to talk about that a bit more later on, but in terms of the aces, yes, each one of them is the beginning of the unfolding of this particular aspect of the human being. But the human being is something more than the 4 suits that have served for the tarot for the last 600 years. So that's what we're going to talk about later. I'll just pass it off to the rest of you after that.
I'd like to offer an image that I think kind of depicts somewhat of that process. Whereas, you have these 4 aces, but there always is this 5th point in the center that needs to function as the mediator between all of these, or the one which
Well, or it's the top of the pyramid. So
or that, yeah.
That's looking down at the top of a pyramid. That's perfect.
Could very easily be an aerial view of a pyramid, or just the old 5-point star.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anyways, moving forward, Jordan.
Yeah, I'll jump right on the pyramid, because structurally a pyramid is itself its own foundation. It is entirely resolving its forces within structurally. And that psychologically, to me, is what we do with the self. If I look at thinking, feeling, intuition, and sensation, thinking could be the Ace of Swords, psychological function. Intuition could be the cups or feeling. And then wands could be intuition or feeling. There's kind of an orbital piece there, but then sensation, physical, visceral touch, and solid things would end up being pentacles, the Ace of Pentacles, as Nick said, the whole acorn in a tree. And if I can hold these up, Nick, while you're showing that, that's a wonderful, actually don't pull it down yet. That's a wonderful image, especially when you go through the symbology around it. I mean, you have Mars, you have the Ankh, you have Venus, you have Mercury, and then you have Saturn. So there are 5 creative principles there in this, and then the moon in between, below the groin, and then the sun in the solar plexus there. That's another image of that pyramid, where the whole idea and the whole individuation is altogether resolved, like the pyramid, within itself, and can emanate from itself. And from that perspective, that creates a more solid ability to connect, for example, with others. And if you wouldn't mind pulling the screen down, the concept that I have with the quintessence is that, for example, if I have the 4 aces, but then they all become 1, that's 5. And to me, oftentimes you can meditate a card back in a tarot if it's a good card back and not just a general graphic. Because, for example, this is trees as above, so below, that are roots and canopy in this card back from this deck. And I think that to me is I call it may be a little abstract, but the N+1 theory. Every number of groups is a +1. So if you have 3, there are 4, because all of them together. And here we have the 4 aces. And the quintessence is the integration of them all as one body, one identity, one self. And so I will hand off to Raquel. Would you like to move?
I'm just going to, I think, just contribute a little bit of everything that you guys already said, because I also believe that the aces are like an indication of potential, but there's this thing that I think was the philosopher Spinoza that said that desires precedes all things, like desire has no matter itself. In the beginning, nothing really has a structure yet. So I think that the aces, all of it, are points of that potential, points of that desire. So, and the thing is, I think that the 5th row is going to be like the conjunction of all these different forces, because all aces will develop a different type of potential. So all of these forces combined will give a person a process of individuation, but it's different from each and every one of us. So I think that's important to keep that in mind, because my experience through all these elements, all these 4 different elements is going to be different than each and every one experiences. So the aces is important, but it's not, it's more like a promise not really. It's not I think I'm thinking about the word true. It's not completely truthful, I think.
Yes, well said. And I think it's always the case.
Why is it not completely truthful, Raquel?
Because it's a promise. I think that the problem of desire is that it can indicate a path, but that doesn't mean that you will walk that path, you know. I think all the aces presents to us a possibility, but it's not an actual act itself, you know. It's a power, but it's not.
Okay, well, we'll leave that, but I don't agree. I think that it is truthful. It doesn't mean that you have to follow that truth, but it is, if it's within you, then it's within you and it's truthful.
Well, I think
I'm hearing
get
that
what you're saying as well.
why we shuffle the cards, though. That's the randomized part of life. We can consciously choose, but in tarot, we shuffle the cards because that is sort of what our lives are like, right? Like we look at these stories on TV. We have, you know, but I don't know about y'all, but my love life does not look like what has been on TV. There's been nothing that could encapsulate that. That's my experience. Maybe some of you guys have had that experience of like, it all works out in some neat way.
Have you seen the new series For All Mankind?
I have not, but I also know that Nick and I started talking at the same time. So I feel like I should hand it over to Nick.
Oh, well, I was just going to say, I agree with you, Raquel, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that what you're saying is that, well, I would preface by saying that I think it's true that force always precedes form, but force doesn't necessarily always take a form. You know, it could be the case that, you know, something really rouses our passion in terms of a career or an interest or a love interest or anything for that matter, but that doesn't mean that we'll actualize it and that it will be something that comes to fruition.
But it doesn't mean it's not true, Nick.
Right. And I would speak to the true or not true of desire from the King of Cups would say, if you experience that feeling, it's yours. The Queen of Wands, though, would say, but you don't have to do anything about it.
Right.
Okay, but I think it's a matter of semantics. I think the point remains more or less, at least to my understanding. I mean, that I think we're more or less all saying the same thing, but it's a disagreement over the term truthful.
There's a difference between fact and truth.
Actually, it feels like there's a difference here between truth and something you enact from something that's true within you.
Well,
it seems, Raquel, you hold on one second, if you would, Samantha. Raquel, it seems you had a good point there in regards to, though, it's not the truth of it actually being true as the way it's put out there. There seemed to be a distinction you had between what was within and then what was actually enacted. Did I hear that correctly, or?
I think that my point, it was not actually about the word truth or its meaning, but it's more about desire itself and how we, in our days, create this weird relationship towards desire. Because I'm saying weird in a social basis, you know, because everybody has like. We have like an idea of what desire actually means, but it's not. If the desire has already a defined form, a defined matter, so it's not actually, I don't think that it is desire as a power force or a vital source, you know, of energy. It's something else, you know, because desire precedes all of that. So I agree that I think that I use the wrong word. I don't think that the truthful is what I'm trying to say, but I also do not have a precise word to put that, you know, because what I'm trying to say is that I think desire is more powerful when it doesn't have a form, so I think the aces represents to us that vigorous energy, so it's always so bright because it doesn't have an actual form. It doesn't represent a thing that we can touch already, so that power of creation, it's bigger. But when we transform that into a matter, into a thing, then we kind of like, we lose something of it,
Raquel, do you mind if I there's a couple of words that occurred to me as you were speaking, which is, do you mind if I go ahead?
Sure, sure.
The way I would tie that in, if it were me thinking those thoughts, which it wasn't, so I'm glad I got to hear what you said, is there's a saying I've heard, it's a bit of a cliched saying, you guys might know it, I'm not sure, but correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a difference between what is real and what is true. Like when we tell a story, we hear a song, it can feel so, it's so true, but we might not have experienced it in that form in our reality.
Yeah.
That's what I'm hearing. Anyway, thank you.
I will share that in when one goes to look at desire, desire, and then you start exploring it without a definite definition, with a defined as a word, then we go back to what Raquel is saying. You can find all sorts of leads or alleys or things to ground or things to release. It takes us on a complete exploratory path. So it's not set in stone. It is completely available for what can be, or what needs to go. So what needs to go, sometimes we see it when the ace is upside down. There's a tendency to see it like that, but there's more to it when exploration is involved. It's not set in stone as a definition. The Buddhists know that very well. Keep looking, and what do you find? Either find yourself and what tendencies are giving you that desire, or you find nothing. So that's a deep exploratory path for desire.
There are two things I would like to offer up. One is an example that I hope will kind of convey the idea that we're all kicking around. And then the second is also just a symbol that I think conveys a very similar notion. And what you were talking about with desire being behind all things, it brought to mind the idea of, say, something like a midlife crisis. Say I'm 45 years old and I reach a point in my life where I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I wish I could regain the vitality of my youth and be as cool as I was when I was 18 and I had that red Corvette and all the girls in high school love me, or something like that. So, say I am contemplating going and buying that red Corvette. Now, I think if you really look at the situation, you would realize that underlying the materiality of the want for a Corvette, there's obviously a desire and a fantasy beneath that of longing for youthfulness and vitality and for a time when things were better. And whether or not I take to form and buy that Corvette, I don't know. But the fantasy and the desire is still there, working behind the material.
And there's also, Nick, if I may.
Sure.
There's also, thank you. There's also a difference between, so it's interesting. So it's very common now in the new age. I'm using air quotes for anyone who's maybe seeing impaired or something, seeing this. The new age, which it's 2021 now, right? So we're in the new age. We have new age books. We have, we're considered like at the forefront or the cutting edge, if you will, of society's philosophy in a sense, right? And we're talking about magic, divination, we're talking about manifestation. These are new age, what I would call new age concepts. I don't even know if that'll exist later because time is weird. But anyway, the point is that there's a difference between what Raquel was speaking about, which she referred to Spinoza. Spinoza, and I never knew this, Spinoza apparently, now I want to read more, was talking about desire being the cause, right? And we all in New Age, the New Age, we often say consciousness is the cause. So it's interesting that the way that those two are related, that can something really exist before we're even conscious of it? You can't get a red Corvette if you don't know what a red Corvette is, if you've never seen a red Corvette. You know, if you're born in a red room and you leave the room and someone says, and you live in that red room your whole life, you leave the room and someone says, what's the color red? You're not aware of it. So it's almost as if the color red doesn't exist. You can't explain.
But I would say that you could have a striving, regardless of whether it's fixed on a red Corvette or any other number of things that you might be striving for, because to me, it's symbolic of the fantasy that's behind the striving, rather than it just being focused on the red Corvette, or, you know, for somebody in the 1800s, it could be that great horse that you were 18. I don't know.
Freedom.
Well, you bring up a great point
whatever.
there, Nick, with the symbols, because I mean, with Jung too, it's basically about interpreting symbology into real life. I mean, the things that need no words that are within. I mean, I think Lisa said desire is not necessarily love, and the distinction can be made, but the desire is almost the raw form of the arising of the feeling.
Yeah, certainly. And I think that, you know, whether it has an object to fix itself upon, I think it still can be kind of a preconscious desire, if that is language that lands for everybody. And the second thing that I wanted to bring up, and I'll just do this quickly, and then I think we should probably transition to what Gilda wants to talk about, is that I know that we talked about the aces as being a symbol of unbridled force. And I think it's interesting if we double back on some of the major arcana, as I've talked about when we move through those. The cards all have different Hebrew letters associated with them. And the Hebrew letter that's associated with the Fool is Aleph. And Aleph has for its symbol an ox or a bull. Right, exactly. And so the symbol of the ox and the bull, I mean, if you really think about how important of a thing that has been for humankind in the development of civilization, I mean, think about the fact that we have a thing called the stock market. We also have, you know, a big bull on Wall Street. And, you know, all of these are symbols of early civilization and the building of commerce and trade, and also the ability to work the land. So when you really think about the ox as a symbol and what it means symbolically, it really is an unbridled force. And, you know, when the bridle was created and that force was able to be used creatively and to till the land, that's really the birth of civilization. So it's really this idea of taking this expansive, unbridled, raw power that's symbolized by the bull or the ox, and with human conscious intervention, making that something that can be used. So I think that's an idea that's also inherent in every one of these ace cards.
And wasn't Wall Street initially the separation between the farms? And so then even the word, you know, Wall Street and stock market comes together as that tool
Jordan,
you said brought to utilize.
Pardon me, Jordan, what do you mean by a separation between the farms? I meant speak for
historically
and don't know what does that mean?
So historically in New York, and when it was first begun, it was all farms.
Layperson's terms.
Well, no.
Actually, Skip can tell this because he
I
knows
can tell this
more.
because my ancestors did it. Okay.
Say it in layman's terms.
The wall is the separation between civilization and the farms. Okay. Right. In other words, outside of the wall were the Boweries. Okay. It so happened that my ancestor actually had Bowery number 6 assigned to him, which is the Bowery which is on the East River, and I don't know, whatever the road is that comes off the Brooklyn Bridge is the north end of his Bowery. That's where it was. So Bowery number 6 was the eastmost Bowery, and Bowery means farm, literally. Bowery is the Dutch word for farm. And so the wall was the defensive position in case the dragons got nasty. Everybody would go behind the wall for protection, because they had the protection of the wall to the north and the rivers on the 3 sides, or the 2 sides maybe.
And in early stories like the Epic of Gilgamesh, for instance, there's all this talk about killing the heavenly bull, building the wall, establishing the perfect city. I mean, they're precursors to this idea of civilization being built up on the back of our ability to use the raw power of nature, but specifically of the bull.
And as well as to discipline.
Right. Yeah.
So I've heard that the word disciple, the root of the word disciple, and I haven't confirmed this, but a wise woman once told me that the root word of disciple has to do something with discipline. Okay. And so the bull, right, which represents masculine brute force, which is metaphorical, right? But everyone knows what this looks like. Okay, a masculine brute force that is active, that does things in the world, right? But then that force needs to be controlled. Maybe controlled isn't the best word, harnessed, stock market, right? Then you could channel that energy in order to create something like the stock market. It needs both. It needs both restriction, which is more of a feminine thing, restriction and reception, as well as the brute masculine force.
Well, it's also why the wall was such a numinous idea for Trump, but as George Patton noted, fixed fortifications are monuments to the stupidity of man. So,
and the Berlin Wall.
You look at the France. I can't remember the name of the gun turrets that are only facing the ocean. It's the not the Maginot Line, and maybe it is the Maginot Line.
Yeah, it is. I think.
And you get it on the side of the back, and they're toast.
Yeah, and there's the same thing in the Philippines on Corregidor. They built this huge cannon facing out to sea, thinking that they would defend themselves from attack from the sea, but they couldn't turn it back toward the land. And of course, the Japanese came from Bataan, from the Bataan Peninsula.
Yeah, you just lay it about 10 miles that way and come inside.
Yeah, but they couldn't turn the cannon around to aim it at the Japanese, so they were toast.
So there's a quote that goes along almost exactly with what you're saying, Samantha, and I think I used it in the talk that I did here on the Tree of Life, but it's by Dion Fortune, she's a great esoteric writer from the early 1900s. And the quote goes something like, "Form disciplines force with merciless severity." And it's a Kabbalistic quote. She's talking about the Tree of Life and these 2 spheres that represent form and force, but it's also the idea of masculine and feminine, active, restrictive. Pretty much everything that you were saying, I think, is encompassed in that quote.
Can you repeat that more slowly?
Form disciplines force with merciless severity. And in that it's because on the tree here, this is form, this is force, this is masculine, this is feminine, this is the pillar of mercy, and this is the pillar of severity. So within that, there's this whole treasure chest of Kabbalistic knowledge. But anyways, I think that if everyone feels satisfied with what we discussed on this first topic here, I think it might be time to turn it over to Gilda and hear what she has to say.
Right before we do, I think you just hit the nail on the head with the quintessence of a quote.
Oh, Gilda. I would like to hear Gilda. With all due respect, brother.
I do too, but thank you, Nick, for that quote. I did. Nick, I
Yeah.
didn't know that quote. Thank you, because that just really put the capstone on the topic.
Cool. You ready, Gilda?
Sure.
Cool. I'll get this
Um,
these images up and going for you.
Spontaneous PowerPoint here.
Okay. All right, and you just tell me when you want me to move forward.
Yeah. Okay. All of these images, and as everyone has spoken about the aces, which represent seeds, have a background to them, and sometimes when it's reversed, some of this background becomes a space where representation can arise. Another reveal can be brought forth. So if you can just put one in its reverse, I will point it out. And we also, as we mentioned before, believe that is not only masculine or feminine which create life, but opposites create life in the way that it is viewed, like reflection and projection. So here, when you see the one on the right reversed, there's life coming from up there that's coming down. There's life right there. It's just not the way we're used to seeing it, because we want life to rise, right? But before that, life descends. Then it rises. So it brings forth the space that one can contemplate about what's behind the original seed. So, and it's coming from the sky. We also thought that the tree is reversed. So the roots are actually up top and the leaves are below. And it makes a lot of sense when the bright light is more near the crown in the way that when we stand up, when the card is reversed, when the card is the other way, the light is at the bottom, at the sacrum, where life is formed. Here, the light has actually, is like the opposite, has risen, it's up on top. So I wanted to point that out, that there's something to the opposition that allows for a space to develop, for us to see in the dark the reflection. And before we see light, we see darkness. We are conceived from darkness. So besides having the regular definitions of when it's reversed, that the order of the life of what it represents is going to not be the straight bull coming in and realizing a manifestation. The opposite gives you a broader view that you can add, that gives, like the Ouroboros that Skip was wearing, it gives you, if you tie the knots, you can go around and create a circle where everything is enclosed. So can we see another one? Let's see what else we can see okay, so here, for example, it is curious also that the hand is here being used, because if we took the symbol itself, you would realize that the cup also has a circle on top, where what is used as a base is also is a platform that is also available. So in reality, in the reverse form, the hand is the one leading the base, is the base. So the hand is a skill, you can say, that manifests an outpour of something. And here it has turned it into it's turning it into an object already, a manifestation of the possibility, where here is still holding, but it hasn't yet turned it over. So the hand turns over. You know, in the chakras, when the Kundalini moves, that is below, every time it pierces a chakra, the chakra turns over. It opens, it flips open. So there's something to the flipping that allows for us to visit perhaps some possibilities that from the cosmos, we also receive life force, the beginning of life force, to turn into a seed. So I'm going to share. And then, so can we see another one? And so it follows the same. It's just a different, like for example, when someone is left-handed or right-handed, everything they do is opposite, but yet they have this amazing correlation that the right people that they use the right hand hardly ever get to, because they're already on a path. So that means they're already holding upright the main way of being. Whereas when the opposite is visited, there's possibility that comes from something that is not completely grounded yet. And it comes from the cosmos. It's a cosmic energy. So that's when I refer to the aces as being connectors to the fifth dimension. It is that idea that it also connects us upside down. If we place ourselves upside down, we are connected through our feet. You know, in Christianity, the feet rise, and you see God from the bottom, from the feet up. So there's energy there, and in the feet you can find a map of our entire body. Yet so if you flip it, you would see that there's also a map from the negative, from the other side, that has instruction for us to learn from. Yeah. And the next one, let's see. Yeah, and here when it's upside down, it actually makes a lot of sense, because it has no grip to it. The gravity is suspended, even though there is an object, but gravity is suspended as such. That means that a definite stand that it has a definition to it is suspended. It's only a thought. It's only a possibility for it to become a manifestation. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting how the hands in this deck, the hands are because hands is what differentiates the skills from humans, from animals, that we've come up to being able to transmit. And it can come out of the cloud, it can come from above, it can come from whichever way it exhibits itself. But upside down means the grip is a possibility against gravity. And individuation is all about that. The individuation of Jung in dreams goes directly to symbology that is like sigils, things on top of things that have no gravity. And out of that then arises the potential of the symbol to have gravity, and for it to be held as something like a seed that can develop into something on earth. But it appears also that there's development already in the cosmic world, except we're not yet privy to it. So that's what I say. Thank you. That's my little talk.
All right, thank you. All right. So if anybody has any questions or comments, observations for Gilda, please fire away.
Just a quick sidebar before whoever's opening and closing, slamming a microwave door, would you please make mute? That was, Gilda, that was wonderful.
Oh, improvisation.
Especially the anti-gravity. I've always thought of that as pushing it down, like the down going. But I like the suspension and stillness you had there with gravity was suspended. That was strong.
Yes, it's suspended for us to be able to enter and begin to form the possibility.
What I like about what Gilda is saying is that the idea of defying gravity is considered magical. So what we're really talking about is we're talking about how to live a magical life on this plane, right? Whatever that means to us. We use the word magic now to mean science that we don't understand yet. That's one form of magic. That's one definition. But it's also up to us to define what magic is for ourselves. And anyway, that definition works for me. The point I'm trying to make is that, I mean, Gilda, I don't even know how to respond, really. I don't know how to tie that in other than just, yeah, magic. Magic's a good reference point for me. But you have the sort of conundrum I find as a human, as a human woman, I identify as female, is that it's integrating what we know on the spiritual plane into our daily lives so we can walk the walk of the magic or the spirit, right? And to me, that has to do with free will. Okay, how do we deal with our free will? And I feel like that provides a nice transition, if I may now, Nick. Nick's facilitating, if I can talk about the ACEs now.
Yeah, as long as nobody has anything that they want to ask Gilda,
Well,
comments, questions,
with
observations.
reference to what Samantha has just brought up, there are cycles in life, and as one traverses these cycles, let's say one is older, one is actually getting closer to the light, let's say, because that when one, so there's the process becomes not one of using magic to walk. It becomes one of interiorizing that magic and making it powerful enough to make the journey that is ahead of us. So, and we spend our entire life trying to take that journey and make it, bring it down. And there is a tipping point, I believe, when one is like 25 or 26, when actually the cells turn around and are no longer growing. They go the other way. They're becoming less. So biologically, we even reflect this reality. Now, if we continue to have, let's say, oh, I want to be young, so that's where all the surgery, all different kinds of things arise that kind of throws our process, light process, because we're light beings, off. So, yeah. It becomes interior. That walking that you're talking about, that walking the magic, becomes an interior process that becomes powerful. And the other process that was powerful at the beginning it lessens in order to give that power to the inner process that is required for the next step.
Well, in the chat also, Evelyn indicated the unknown is the magic, and then the suspension begins to enter the lesson. And that comfortability with the not knowing, the unknown, becomes magical. I really appreciate that she said the suspension then enters into the lesson or begins to enter the lesson. That's a nice handoff there with these cards.
I would like to talk about now the ACEs and their connection. I have a different way of saying what I hear Gilda saying. Because we do want to bring it back to the tarot, right? And we're visual people. So is it possible to put me, I don't have a slide. I have the actual physical card. Can you make me big for the YouTube audience?
I mean, that's what I'm seeing currently. I think that's what the YouTube viewers will also be seeing. So
Is that-
since you're actively speaking, everybody, maybe other than yourself, can see you as the full screen.
I don't think so.
Okay, well, there's nothing that I can do. I don't know if that's something that Skip can do, but I presently
can wait.
see you on the full screen.
I can,
Or actually, Nick, would you put the first slide? She has the ace of one, or the third slide, the ace of wands you have, maybe. Since you have the 4 cards,
Thank
maybe
you.
then
Thank
Samantha
you,
can
no.
narrate.
Thank you, no. Because in order to prove my point, I need to refer to other cards. So
I'm gonna try to do something. Just hold on. Samantha, can you speak now? And because I'm watching the YouTube.
Testing.
Yeah,
Testing.
yeah.
1, 2, 3. It's doing it. If not, here, I'll say this. If it's doing it, great. And if not, we can go to the Q&A. I'm fine with it.
It's not working for
Yeah.
me.
Why don't I like Nick's suggestion? He suggested in the chat that we go to Q&A with the YouTube audience, if that's possible to do.
Well,
And
it
we can
doesn't, the chat doesn't seem to be working, and I don't know if anybody can get on their computer and see it, but I have my phone here.
I
I'm on the computer. It's not working.
Okay, yeah.
I think when we hit 1 hour.
1 hour, does it come live?
Skip. Skip, can you go ahead and make me the host, or do whatever it is so that you can full screen me, because my visuals are physical in my hand. They're not a slide.
Well, yeah, we can make you speaker view.
Just for a few minutes while I go
Right.
through this would be great.
Okay, that we can do. And I just put a question out on the YouTube chat. Does anybody want to comment or question? And so the chat is working.
Yeah, it's coming up on my phone now. Anybody out there in the YouTube audience, any questions you have pertaining to what we're talking about tonight, or just generally for
Diana says it's working.
Tarot, I think that would be fun to have some interaction with all of you. So please.
Yep. So we'd love to hear from you if you're in the YouTube audience. We're conscious and we're focusing on it, on what you have to say. So it's nice that you're just taking it all in from us. But I don't think we're the end all be all of tarot.
If there's any people from Biddy Tarot tonight, please speak up.
What tarot?
Biddy, I do readings.
BIDDY.
Yeah, through a site, and I've invited some people, so I don't know if, yeah.
Well,
okay.
How about as we keep an eye on that, let's hear what you want to talk about, Samantha, and we'll intermittently just check in on the YouTube chat. And see
fantastic. I do want to make it clear that I want to make sure people can see me, though. So let's make sure that that is possible. Otherwise, it will be lost.
That is happening.
I think even just holding the cards up will be sufficient.
No, thank you. That's why I requested to be large. Thank you. So everyone can see me now in the YouTube audience. It's looking like for double screen folk. Thank you.
Yep.
So, okay, great. So, but I do appreciate you, brother. I get it. Oh. So, being assertive is not easy. So I will start with wands because that's what this is about, being assertive and active in the world, right? So if you, actually, let's set the wands aside for a second. We're going to start with cups. So I'm going to be using to have a through line with the few minutes I'm about to talk now. I'm going to be using the idea of the gift or the acorn. I'm going to switch back and forth between those metaphors. Okay. So cups, and even a lot of beginning tarot practitioners will understand this. Cups represent the emotions, right? It also represents a feminine principle of receiving, right? It's more yoni-like than phallic, right? Well, emotions and displays of emotion. So I'm sure you guys can appreciate, so look at the following and you'll notice that even if you cannot speak English, right? I'm speaking the English language. You can understand the visual metaphor, okay? Someone who's bilingual, maybe Raquel can tie it all together or say it in Portuguese. So what does it look like to accept the gift of an emotion or to nurture the seed of what emotion is? I say, this is subjective, but I chose the Two of Cups, right? There is an exchange or a potential for exchange, depending on one's interpretation, right? And then what does it look like to not accept the gift? Might look something like this. We see a repetition of the image in all the aces. This is the only other card in the tarot deck that has as literal a repetition of the aces as this one. And this is the Four of Cups. And facial expression is, I think it's meant to be ambiguous in a way, or it can go either way, ambi. It can go either way, where this person has their arms crossed, their legs crossed, and that's typically a kind of no or a defensive gesture or keeping out. And their eyes are looking neither at these cups nor at this cup here. So sometimes this card is interpreted as refusing a gift, for instance. Now, the cups are the most dramatic example of that accepting versus repelling the gift, or choosing to nurture the seed or not nurture the seed. But the point that I'm trying to make here, you know, for instance, it becomes more abstract. Swords, the realm of the mind, right? To me, this looks like, out of all the swords, because there's 2 through 10, right? So Samantha chose what she felt. You guys can choose what you feel. But to accept the gift of swords, to reject the gift of swords, okay? If you look at the rest of the sword suit, I think it's much more kind of abstract than the cups. The point that I'm making here, I think the through line between what I'm telling y'all is that tarot tells stories, and it's special because unlike a story you look at in a book, right, where you read from left to right until all the pages are done, or if you speak an Asian dialect, you go, I believe it's down, up, and the other way. Yeah, I think right, left. I don't speak any Asian dialects except for like a couple of words. So, but thank you, Raquel. Someone in the YouTube audience, if you speak, like, jump in and correct me if I'm wrong. But tarot is randomized because we shuffle the deck. So that's the whole debate. Is it real, guys? Is tarot real, right? Or is it true? It's the art of interpretation, right? But that's life too. You can, we can plan on things, we can make our plans, and then something really hard happens, like this, okay? Like the Ace of Pentacles. This represents what's true in the material world. This is accepting the gift. If you accept a gift, you might have to, you have decisions to make, and they're not easy. It's a balancing act. But you might not even see it. So you might not even outright reject it. You might just, sometimes people call them beggars, open to interpretation. They're people who are needy. One of them's walking without shoes. The other is not able-bodied and needs to walk with the assistance of crutches. And guess what? There is the miracle right there. And they don't even see it in their conscious awareness. These are the types of things that happen in our human experience that make life difficult. And frankly, if you look at a lot of the cards in tarot, if you look at the journey of each suit from 2, you know, we're talking about aces, but if you look at the journey from 2 through 10, most of them express some type of difficulty. It's actually not all people who are fluent in tarot will know what I'm saying when I say this. It's not all 10 of cups all the time. Feel me? It's not all the judgment card, which has to do with resurrection. Sometimes it looks like this. Sometimes, okay, right? Sometimes it looks like this. Sometimes it looks like 10 of swords. Feel me? Right? Struggle. Okay. And then sometimes it looks like this. When you win, you know. So the whole debate we're ultimately having here, in my humble opinion, before I wrap up, because I'm getting excited, I'm feeling the spirit. I'm like, ooh, I don't even know where all that came from, spirit. Can't take credit. If any of this is resonating, give yourself credit, because you showed up. If it's resonating, we're vibing together. We're co-creating meaning. Anyway, my point was, what's my point? I have a lot of points. I want to end on a good note. So let me just, oh, I forgot the swords. No, I didn't. Did I? Yeah, I did. No, I didn't. The point is, there's a lot that's up for debate. For instance, why would we even use something like tarot? It's 2021, people. We can go to the moon. We are now accepting that there are more than 2 genders. Finally, European society is catching up with the rest of the freaking world, right? And there's different sexualities, right? So we've done things now that we never imagined were possible, you know, when we were pre-verbal, or maybe we did, no one can prove it. But the point is this is an art of interpretation. So whether or not you think something magical is going on, or whether it's just material, you have free will, but you also have the random. And to me, that's what it is to be a spiritual being on the human earthly plane. I have spoken. Thank you. Thanks for helping me put all that together in my mind.
You didn't hear my laugh. Thank you.
Amen,
That was
Samantha.
good.
I don't even know what I said. I blacked out. Where am I?
That was what I call a rantra with a capital R. It's the other thing than a mantra. So good on you.
The love keeps coming back.
Nice rantra.
Someone else talk, please, for the love of God.
We have a question from Justin Case in the YouTube
Justin
audience.
Case, hey.
And
I know Justin.
I don't know. I think that he said this a couple of times, but I think that name is a joke, right? It is him and just
yeah, like just in case.
Yeah, right. I mean, I know I've seen Skip address him a couple of times in the chat where I was like, it seems like.
Well,
yeah,
I know I have a sense of who Justin
Case is cheeky.
Right.
Yeah, you called and you called a pool.
Realistic way, but as I understand it, he lives in Denmark.
Yeah, that's what I.
And so we have attracted people from at least 3 continents tonight.
Gilda, you have a comment from Jerome Waddle. Thanks to Gilda for her excellent and meaningful presentation.
Yes, indeed.
Nice.
So
I concur.
If I may, I would share a dream with Justin Case. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right, Justin. So I'm 26. So I don't know what age you are and at what point your dreams of flying diminished or outright disappeared. But I'll tell you, probably, I don't know, 3 months ago, I had a really, really strange dream. And I'll tell you that I have these dreams a lot. And I would not consider myself to be a person who aspires to be a lucid dreamer or has lucid dreams often. I have in the past where I've realized I'm dreaming, never anything where I was like, I can control this and I can fly and I can go do whatever I want. But this one dream a couple of months ago, this did actually happen. I was often, a lot of my dreams will start out where I'm actually like leaving my house, like, and I go to some place and then the dream happens. And then I also have a lot of memories of coming back into my house as if I'm like actually leaving my body and coming back into my body sometimes. It's very weird. But in this one dream, that I'm talking about probably 3 months ago. I was leaving my house. I was walking off my porch, and I walked out into my yard, and just all of a sudden I realized that I was dreaming. And I started to look at my hands and realized that all of these weird trails of light were coming off of my hands. And at the moment that I realized that I was dreaming and did this with my hands, I also completely, gravity lost its effect on me. And I just started to float up into the air, but in the most awkward way. It was not graceful at all. It was like I was floating off, but my feet went up first and I was like upside down. And like, it was like I was in a zero gravity chamber or something, but you know, had no control over my body. So I don't know if it's the same thing. I didn't interpret the dream. It didn't seem like one of those really big, meaningful dreams, but just a weird one. I don't know if other people have dreams about flying often, but I'm 26 and I had one. Samantha, you'll have to unmute.
Well, I just want to remind folks that the one rule that I have instituted from the beginning of this YouTube channel is we won't interpret others' dreams. You can tell us your own dream and interpret it, but if we have a third party starting to interpret your dream for you who is not a mental health professional, I think we're getting into space that we don't belong. So I just ask everybody not to interpret Nick's dream.
That's what booking a private reading is for.
Right. You can have a private reading and a private discussion with someone, but you know, because I am the host of this YouTube channel, I never want to suggest to anyone, either in this group or on the YouTube channel, that I am a mental health professional or any of the rest of us are. We are all seekers in various forms, and you can take it or leave it what we say, but we don't. We are not giving professional opinions. We are not licensed to do that, and that's a matter for a mental health professional to take up. So I'm sorry to be a wet blanket on that.
Well, we can put down this channel is for entertainment purposes only. Aren't we entertaining?
No, it's for educational purposes.
Well,
too,
but not, yeah, that's the legal jargon they try to.
You guys, let's just stop fighting. It's edutainment.
Nobody's
No
fighting.
one's fighting. You'd know if we were fighting.
We're fighting in a five of wands way.
I think
Not a five of swords way.
one of the PowerPoints that Nick brought up was the we space.
Right.
That a we space is created. You know, there are many we space. There is a conference on we space, how to create one, how to get in touch with one, how to.
Can you give us an idea of what you mean by we space? I'm not completely clear on that.
By we space means that in this group, there's an intelligence that arises in the space, which has a combination of all of our intentions and energies.
Okay.
And it gets constellated. Mm-hmm. And that's what I mean by we space. And it grows. And once we leave the platform and go through, it stays with us. There is an actual space that's been constellated, and it has an intelligence of its own.
Yeah.
It's not, and it's a combination of everybody's intelligence. It's a combination of what has taken place here. And with that, I was going to share that since I do write my dreams all the time, every day, every single day, and we're talking about Ace of Cups. I had an experience, and where it's very clear, and it had different facets, not only during dream, but in waking state, and it keeps going, which is what I was trying to say, that individuation is something that interlaces the lunar with the daylight, and it becomes an entity of its own. It has a life of its own. And in that particular experience, it was like a switch. that they call them sub-personalities, or you're talking to, you know, what parts of you that you're talking to, just to call it something. It fed on an emotion. It took a very deep emotion, anger, whatever it was, and arranged the story, the dream story, or the whatever story. It was fueled by the emotion that it grabbed onto, and then it created its own story. That's an intelligence. We have that intelligence. You know, they say that the story about the iceberg, that we only use like top of the iceberg and everything else is under the hood. Well, what I'm trying to explain, that we have all these worlds and all these psychic objects that actually have life, and they live inside us, and
They surely do.
exactly. And part of the tarot reveals, allows us, is one way of doing it.
Yeah,
I
it's a
will
way to
offer.
connect to those things, because
Mhm.
we all
Yes.
connect to them.
I also do the I Ching, and the I Ching is an amazing oracle, and so they are more concerned. Like when Samantha showed this card and that card, they usually work more in the in between. What it takes every time, let's say you accept the gift, that doesn't last, because accepting that gift means that now you're going to the next thing, to what are you going to do with this gift. So it is more about the movement of it than the actual moment of, let's say, accepting the gift. It's more about the movement. Okay, you accepted a gift you're about to accept, and so the I Ching shows you that perfectly, because that's where they place their emphasis, on the movement.
Gilda, may I? When you were speaking about the we space, it took me back to your aces, upright and reversed, where they're, since it's coming from the firmament, from down, from either from down or from above, and the conscious, and then the heavenly unconscious. And it's interesting that Martin Buber's I and thou came up as when it was reversed. I use it in a whole different way.
What is that now? What is Martin Buber?
Buber.
What is the
Martin
what is
Buber,
that?
Buber.
No,
There's
I
a
don't
book
need to
called
spell it. I'm wondering what it's referring to.
Martin Buber wrote a book called I and Thou. And what it is there's the I, and then the sacred I, which is within me, and the sacred thou, which is how I sacredly interact with another. And so he runs that concept within, good question, within and outside. And it basically takes interaction within and outside to a higher octave. And so thanks for that, Samantha. And Gilda, when you were going through the retrograde, or I use retrograde as if it's stationed, it's planted, it's natural when it's reversed. But you had more of the divine reversed that was coming into play, and that was strong. And so that I and thou of the I of the upright card and the thou of the reversed card really, to me, poured into the we space you were talking about here. So just to make that I thou point to your reversal depictions.
Any fans of Romeo and Juliet will also, if this is helpful to remember this, it's a horrible play to be a fan of. What? That's weird. Don't do that, but but we're drawn to it anyway. Shakespeare, I'm making a reference to Billy Shakes. Okay, Billy Shakespeare, he used I believe when there's a difference between thee and thou. I believe one of them is more formal and one of them is less formal. So anyway, so at first I thought I and thou, there's no word for I.
Well, I bid thee farewell. It's common and informal. I bid thou farewell, and you're going to change the tune.
Yes, thank you.
Or thou shalt not. I mean, it's a little more intense, not necessarily forceful, but no, it's a good language distinction.
Well, let's make a little bit further comment about Martin Buber here. Martin Buber was a Jewish intellectual, rabbi, I believe, and he and Jung were kind of oil and water for most of their careers, although they
Right.
both went to Aranos regularly. And if I understand the gist of Dr. Jung's upset with Martin Buber, is that Martin Buber tended toward the logos and
Right.
suggested that God was something that he could hear talking to him in physical terms. And he claimed to have a facility that nobody else had, so that he could talk that way. And
Well, the secular humanism of things rather than the Jung's eros.
yeah, precisely. I think that's the fundamental difference between them, or not the fundamental difference, but the upset between them, to the extent there was upset.
And I couldn't agree
they
more.
obviously knew one another for many years, and Jung did make a number of comments about Buber over time, but.
And I would agree. And in fact, I think that's the reason I was only drawn to that one book of his, because that's where it confluences, just in concept from the title, with a vein that was more congruent with Jung. Whereas you're right, the rest of it, it wasn't as sacred. It was that rock, this thing I can say. And the capital R reason just permeated his work too much. Well, not too much for him. I mean, it was good, but that's a good point.
Okay, so
I have never before heard of Buber before this evening.
Martin Buber.
Yeah, you might want to look it up. He's on Wikipedia.
Maybe
Well, then,
maybe not.
Maybe
But I
not. Yeah.
then you just won't know.
I appreciate that you guys appreciate it. I
It
consider
does.
that
Yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean,
Yeah, it doesn't.
They
It's
both have been dead for over 60 years.
just another
Tomato,
it's another
tomato.
sandbox to play in. It's just another sandbox to play in. Keep your same yellow bucket and blue shovel.
Skip, could you possibly talk about Carl Jung and Abraham Maslow? Is
And
there
folks,
anything
hey,
to say?
To all my beloved white men, my beloved white brothers, just for other people who are watching, these are some white men who I've never heard of before. So if you could just translate a bit. I know who Maslow is, and now I know who Buber is, but I'm sure I'm not the only one who hasn't heard some of these names. So if you could just give a little background.
Brendan, and a direct answer to your question is no, because I simply don't know enough about Maslow.
I could say something about.
I know he has the hierarchy of needs,
Yes.
and that hierarchy of needs means something. It's certainly true, and we were taught it in college by somebody. I never took a psychology course in college, so I don't know who taught it to me, but somebody did. But
Right.
if you want to give us a back of the envelope description.
Well, I am a visual person, as I'm sure a lot of us tarologists are. So I am going to just quickly do a Google search to see, because I think I will be more articulate if I have something to look at. Hierarchy of needs. Okay, great.
Wait,
I found one. Okay, great. So let's do this one. Can you skip? Can you make it so that I can share screen? Is that something I can do now?
I think we already did that.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Okay. Let's see. Share screen. Disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, just a minute. Let me fix you. Okay, you should be able to do it now.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, visual learners. I'm sure many people have heard of the hierarchy of needs. However, if you haven't, that's okay, because we have a visual. Okay, so Abraham Maslow was a Psychiatrists or psychologists, folks? Do we know? As I try to make this
I
bigger.
think he was a psychologist, but
A psychologist, yeah.
I don't know for sure.
And
Probably necessary.
and maybe our person who asked the question could hold on.
Hey, Brendan, I'm curious. Are you wondering about the similarities between the two, or are you just wondering about general information?
Okay, here we go.
I'm sorry. I listened to the BBC. That's my only source of news and entertainment in the car. And often I tell you know who, I can't say her name because she'll say something, Alexa. I often ask her to turn the BBC news on. And yesterday they had a show, as they often have, about various famous people. And yesterday it was talking about Abraham Maslow and Freud. And
I think I know of a connection.
but nobody talked about Carl Jung and Maslow. And I thought, I wonder whether they knew each other, were friends, or what was the story. But I can Google all this. But I thought I'd come to this panel of erudite experts.
I would like to try. I would like to try here. You guys are still seeing my screen or no?
Thank you.
No,
Will someone take it? Okay.
Well, Maslow was Jewish, I believe, and so was Freud. So there's a connection right there.
Can you please stop the screen share for a second?
well,
to Brendan's point too, are we going to have
Hey, wait a minute.
question here, or is this a Google list?
Well, I would like, okay, you guys, like, I can't actually answer the question. I mean, I would like to try to answer the question, but
okay,
I'm
now
sharing the screen. There.
let's clarify with Samantha. Samantha, are you unable to share your screen?
Are you guys able to see what I'm looking at right now or no?
No.
Okay, so I found it. Oh, I didn't press screen share.
Oh, well,
Okay,
that'll do
so
it.
first here, this is what I'll say first. So, Brendan, I appreciate
do
the
it.
question. And I think what the connection, I'm going to say what I think the connection is first before I show the visual, if I may, okay? I think the connection is that Freud was different from Jung, if in the world of psychology, right? He was different philosophically because Freud focused a lot on the past, your childhood, right? If you had an issue with your butthole when you were 3 because of something if you were shamed for pooping or whatever, that changed you in later life. And now you're anal retentive, right? And you're stuck being an anal retentive person your whole life, right? I'm being dramatic. I'm using hyperbole to prove a point, okay? So, whereas Jung, from my understanding, okay, was more about just because that happened in your childhood doesn't mean you have to walk around uptight your whole life because your mother shamed you for pooping your diaper, right? You can change. And I'm using a silly example to sort of just let it sink in a bit, because we all have our own examples, perhaps, of things that happened in our childhood or in our past in general that were difficult, maybe even being lowercase to capital T, traumatizing in whatever way. And part of being human is, this is my conviction, and probably a lot of the conviction of a lot of people on this panel, is to heal and evolve, right? So some say that Jung was more of a, optimistic. Okay, now if this were a channel for Freud, I'm sure we would say, tut, that's not true, blah, blah, blah. But this isn't a channel for Freud. This is a channel for Jung and Tarot. So bringing it back to the point, now I'm gonna show y'all a visual to, and then I will pass the mic to someone else. Thank you for your time and attention. Okay, share. Okay, now, yeah, it's gonna work, right? Shoot, one moment, guys. Thanks for your patience. Here we go. Okay, so pay no attention to or pay attention to it if you want a definition, it's defined right there. But what I wanted to draw your attention to is on the left, the visual, right? The idea is that we start out with our physiological needs is what needs to be met first, okay, then safety needs, then love and belonging, then esteem, and that leads to self-actualization. The idea is that you need the bottom tier to be fulfilled before you can rise up the pyramid. I guess a miracle would be being able to skip around or something like that. But yeah, so I think that Abraham Maslow was someone who, I think he came after Jung. So I think it was a continuation of the ideas that he focused a lot on self-actualization rather
Yeah,
than
and I think
childhood.
that in fairness, we're getting up to the issue of the fifth Thoreau now when we're talking about.
Right, because if I may, Maslow basically took it as a spiritual elitism. You get to self-esteem last, well, then you're never going to get to it. And Jung took it as that if you don't have the self-actualization, everything else will flow from that or not.
Could you say that again more slowly?
Maslow pretty much makes a spiritual elitism, contrasting to Jung, where the self-esteem, self-actualization is at the top, which means you're never going to get to it. It's a goal. But Jung would say you would never finish individuation, but you start with it and everything else flows from that. So it seems to me that Maslow differentiated out the middle three, started with logos and stayed to logos. And then all of a sudden there's going to be this magical spiritual awakening at the top. Whereas Jung starts with that as your nature of capital S self. And that's to me just a simple contrast, is that Jung was inclusive, that individuation would be the end all be all and everything would flow from that. Everything was required for it. But that Maslow then made more of a logos, similar to Buber, gesture, as if similar to a lot of other psychologists in his era. It was all about behaviorism.
Why would Jung take on
not myth?
Why would Jung take on patients if he believed that individuation was an end goal? I think pardon me. No, why would he take on patients if he believed that individuation is where you started?
Because the 4 words with a comma right in the middle, always complete, never finished. And so he would start with where they were and take them to where they would be, but always complete, never finished. You don't start with the master, you just start with being born.
I would like to jump in here. I mean, I am a psychology student, so I feel like maybe I have a right to say something.
Yes,
absolutely.
Finally, someone in the profession.
I'll allow it.
Someone who's actually out of course.
So
I'm 50 years old. No one knows it, but I have a lot of wisdom.
Maslow was working kind of on the tail end of a period of psychologists that were really concerned with looking at the stages of development in a life. You know, he came after people like Piaget, like Erik Erikson, who was a student of Freud, who later developed all these different stages in life that are necessary and build on one another to kind of make up the individual. And then Maslow came, and he has the idea of the hierarchy of needs. But I think it's a really similar idea that we've talked about several times on the channel, to where like let me think. I think if we were to put the 2 cards of like the devil and the lovers together, it would be much like the top of Maslow's pyramid being the lovers and the bottom being much like the devil card. Like, the bottom really centers around just very basic day-to-day needs. And, if you think about the lives of everyday individuals, most people wake up, go to work, come home, have dinner, go to sleep, and they live out that same pattern, and a lot of their life is in service to just those very basic needs.
Right. And Samantha's showing the devil card, which shows the chains being loose. The chains speak, Samantha, so we can see the card.
Oh.
And
there
am I seen?
Yes, you're seen now. We're seeing you now. So the point is that these chains are loose and could be removed and gone on to something else, but we allow ourselves to be held back by life.
So continuing with my point here, what I'm trying to say is that there are tons of I'll speak hypothetically here, but I think this applies to everybody at some point in their life. Imagine somebody who's living in a city and they're doing all that they can do just to keep their head above water. They're working just to live and living just to work, and that's pretty much it. So they're stuck down on the lowest level of this pyramid, maybe the second lowest level, and never really getting a chance to go above that. So I think Maslow was attempting to make some kind of give somebody a concept in which you can see that, we have these basic needs that need to be met. And also we have a need for transpersonal experience, for spiritual experience or whatever. And I think that's what I'm building up to, is saying, I think that's a similarity between Maslow and Jung. I mean, Maslow was a humanist and Jung was a depth psychologist and created kind of his own field of work. But I think Maslow is also known for a concept called the peak experience. And
That's true.
I could be wrong in saying this, but I think he developed a ton of his ideas by studying with North American Indians, studying with tribes in Canada and across the U.S. as well. I think I've heard Miles talk about this before.
That's correct.
Now that you mentioned it, I think
Nicholas,
you did.
that's correct.
Okay.
I mentioned it yesterday.
Yeah, and you can see in the communal style of living, such as these people may have lived in, I think you can see the need for the very basic connections to the earth, having a solid family unit, some food to eat, some clean water to drink, the basic needs are met. And, maybe once you're old enough, you can go have some religious experiences with the elders of the tribe, have these experiences.
There was less need at that time.
Say what?
There was less need at that time.
Most
it's not like today. So they lived basic because they were wise.
Yeah.
Well, no, that completely frames it
great
differently, because it's a land based rather than logos based, and that frames it differently, because you're dealing with the spirit of the earth.
And I would say that those needs that Nicholas referred to are indeed the same. And Nicholas has also brought this point up before. We still need to have a relationship with the land, or we suffer the consequences.
Yeah, and
so peak experiences are equivalent in Jungian psychology to numinous experiences.
Numinous experiences, right?
Also, I think that's the similarity, yes. But I also think that they both have this idea of fixing yourself on a transpersonal goal. I think it's much like Jordan was saying, where it might be a process that's never fully completed. It's a transpersonal goal.
And I was listening to Ann Belford-Ulanoff today, and she said expressly that the point is it's the journey, it's not a destination.
Right.
Jim,
and even
you're referring to, could you let us know her name? And I know nothing about her. Who is she?
Ann Belford-Ulanoff.
Who is that?
Well, we interviewed her on Wisdom Path last year, and so you can actually see her. But she is Professor Emeritus in Religion and Psychology from Union Psychiatry, not psychology, psychiatry.
Wow.
Professor of Psychiatry and Religion at Union Theological Seminary.
There's one.
Well, Nick, I'm glad you brought up Piaget too, because you basically hit a higher level piece here. Because, like, for example, I don't remember what they are. I used to utilize them in various essays in college, but Piaget's 3 Steps to Learning. What we have here is all of these people generating a process by which these things occur. And they're coming at it subtly differently and from a different frame. But I think that's really key, because you're with Maslow too, coming from the land. And as Evelyn said, because they were smarter, civilization, when it removes us from nature, creates uncivilized behavior, because we're irritated that we're not actually natural. And so that removal from the land is a piece that's here, I think, in all of them, where Jung is the land of you within, Maslow is the land of your context, Piaget would be how you think through it. And there's different ways to slice it and dice it that I think are really working again with capital S self.
And
Yeah, there's one final thing
I'd
that I
like
really
to
wanna
also,
clarify.
You guys, you
Right.
have to organize the talking. I mean, I think Nick wants to say something, and then Evelyn, and for last Samantha. Okay.
Yeah, thank you,
Go,
Raquel.
Nick.
Yes.
so can I just confirm, are we going to use our hands like this or the raise your hand feature from now on after that order? We want to think about that.
I
Okay.
don't know.
No, just
Okay, let me quickly
follow Raquel's order.
Okay.
Okay.
The one thing that I want to say, I mean, this is what I was trying to build up to this whole time, is that all of these, the conventionally modern psychologists were attempting to contextualize a process or a concept or a structure that appealed to the modern Western individual.
Masses.
So they were building this up on these ideas of studying people that live with the
And
land,
men.
but they were making a structure that appealed to somebody who lived in a city, who could understand this stuff. And I think the difference between Maslow, Piaget, Erikson, Adler, all of the great psychologists, and Jung is that Jung was kind of medieval. He was kind of like looking back into history and saying, I would rather turn in this direction and give you a context that's more from the 1500s than these other guys that are saying this is something that will appeal to the Western mind now and in the future. So I think that's the similarity and also the difference. And now, please, let's hear from Evelyn.
Hi, guys. I really appreciate all the information I'm getting here. It's a lot, but it's good. It's good stuff. It's my first time here. I'm really enjoying this. Very interesting topics. I was going back to that pyramid, that pyramid of life. You know, you can't move up the pyramid if your life is based on fear. You're going to stay basic, basically. You know, and sometimes that has to do with how you grew up too. If you grew up in fear, you're not going to move up in that pyramid. And no matter how many desires we have, we cannot move unless we actually separate from that, you know, from that fear. It's very cool. I like this subject. Thank you, guys. I keep it simple.
Yeah, I just like to comment, or no, it's Samantha's turn. Sorry.
Thank you, Skip. I think Evelyn makes a great point because I come from a first world country economically, right? And so because now there could be a shift in the United States, right? So right now where, you know, things financially aren't the same as they were, right? But I'm also lucky enough that there has been intergenerational wealth in my family. So for instance, if I'm low on cash, chances are I have someone I can call so that I can go buy food, for instance, so that need will be met. It's easier to concentrate and write about philosophy on a full stomach, right, than it is if you haven't eaten. So it's an important distinction to make because you're talking about privilege and it's a challenge then. It's a challenge because so when you guys were bringing up or when Nick brought up they were speaking to men, yes, or no, sorry, you didn't say the word man, you said people. But I said they weren't just speaking to modern people or modern urban people. They're speaking from a point of view that was male and white. So to some degree, that's actually it's a little more niche than that. I thought that was an important point to make. And I thought it was also important that Evelyn referred to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Evelyn, but things that are primitive So I should study up on this and do a presentation, because it probably is worth an entire presentation. But sometimes things that are, sometimes, for instance, the Native Americans, indigenous people, indigenous tribes from all over the world have traditionally by European society been looked at as backward, right? Whereas Evelyn was saying it's forward thinking in that it promotes our survival a lot of, and there's a lot of these groups that have survived against great odds against colonialism, not a lot of them, but some. So I think that's a good point, that the things that are primary, you could say they're older models, or you could look at them as prototypes for molds that would help us to imitate. That's the point I wanted to make.
Okay, Gilda has her hand up, so Gilda, you have to unmute.
Yeah, I just
though.
wanted to comment on the tail end of what was being said. There's many psychological models similar to Maslow's. There's Jeffrey Martin and the Finder's course. There's Terry O'Fallon stages. I mean, and they are profound, amazing, and completely modern. But Jung, in my estimation, brought to say that we as people, modern people, knew all that he discovered. No, a lot of things have gone hidden from people's awareness in order for people to use it.
Or
And they make exactly so. They what he brought is new to even people now. There's many people who absolutely have no clue.
Yeah,
And at the time when
century is Jung's
exactly,
century.
and when he brought it, every single person that he had, they all went out to write books, and they all say it. They want to do what he does. The minute they would have a session with him, everyone wanted to do what he did. So it's definitely something that is so new, but it was hidden. And he went through the past, what was hidden in alchemy. He discovered a lot of things, and he, through being a doctor, he paired the two in order to not be completely wacky at that time when spirituality was not considered a serious logos way of living life. So he is so new that still, I think 95% of the population would never are completely unaware of the possibility that arises from the individuation process.
Didn't psychology for 4 decades just act like he didn't exist and basically subvert completely?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was all trying to drive towards logos, and we couldn't have people self-actualizing because they might actually think for themselves.
And a lot of people were burned and killed in the war, all the holy wars and all of the different things. So this exactly what Samantha said. It was suppressed. Bing. So only a few people.
Yeah, I mean, I'll discuss this topic, and I'll discuss this topic in the advanced reading group. I don't want to do it publicly. The world isn't ready for the public discussion of the historical.
So he's new.
No good. So a question I have
is not new. He was suppressed. He was suppressed.
And Jung also had limits that are important, limits that were defined by his positionality, his gender, his racial background. I think he was a genius. I also think there were some flaws in the way he did his research.
No doubt.
I have a marginalia question, and it may not be for tonight, but just to put it out there, that seems to be congruent along with the history and the way this has tracked. Why are we taught to demonize the witches instead of the people who burned them?
Precisely.
Because of power, because of social hierarchies and constructs. And this is one of the critiques that would be made of the New Age. We want to say, oh, if you believe it, it'll happen, right? But there's those moments like the Five of Wands where you got to tussle, or the Knight of Swords. There are moments where you have to be assertive confident and
burning witches
aggressive.
is not a
I'm going to
tussle.
finish my thought. Thank you. You have to do that because not everything is just. So I'll give you an example that Jung had some very unpleasant things to say about African people he visited to study that were scientifically inaccurate and based in racism. So that's another example of the limits of our time. And I just think I have no way to tie that up and resolve that and make it okay. But I would like to give a full view of, we
Okay,
live in a
Samantha.
society.
So
I will
Evelyn-
just finish
Evelyn
my
has a
sentence.
comment.
I would like to finish
Samantha.
my sentence. And that's all I have to say is we do live in a society that is dominated by white supremacy and the supremacy, the supposed assumed supremacy of men, and that dominates everything. And
Yeah,
we're
okay.
working to
Fair
change,
enough. That's a true statement, Samantha.
Yeah.
Let's
which is
take
why
up
I
the
needed to finish
issue.
my sentence. Thank
Right.
you.
Okay. So let's take up your issue, though, in the advanced reading group, lest we leave misimpressions to the public.
Right,
That
and-
is,
I think that
Not-
there was another woman who wanted to speak.
yes,
Evelyn.
it's Evelyn's turn.
Hi guys, I just wanted to talk. You said about the witches. If the witches weren't killed off, there wouldn't be Christianity today. They had to kill off the witches. The Christianity wouldn't be here today. A lot of Christian traditions come from pagans and witches. So
Absolutely.
if it wasn't for them,
Well, yeah, they had to nuke them off to steal the tradition. Right.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And tarot is a good example of something
That's-
that a lot of people, I have business cards. I have business cards. My tarot service is called Temple of Paper. You can find me on Instagram or email me at templeofpaper@gmail.com. I do divination for people one-on-one over Zoom, and I take clients. I'm looking for some regulars if you guys are interested. People tore my business cards. Okay, so I have these business cards I printed up, and in my apartment building, I thought, I'll leave a few, not enough to be annoying, right? Like I didn't flyer the whole building, but I put them in little secret places, and I think I know who did it, but someone tore them. It's either this woman who has a personal issue, poor thing. I don't think she's well. And for whatever reason, maybe it's because I'm empathic, she's sort of lobbed on to me as being a problem. But but there's that, or it might be some of the folks who I'm assuming, I was raised Christian and baptized and all that, but that I'm assuming might be Bible thumpers. I'm using quotation marks to be respectful, but basically there are people, many Africans and indigenous people and people who are mezclado or in between, like me and perhaps some other people today here on this panel and YouTube audience, is basically in order to survive, they needed to find a way to be in the system, but also in a secret way, preserve the traditions of their people, so that those meanings would still exist. So for instance, some people consider tarot magical, and some people say, oh, magic is bad, blah, blah, blah. But there's a lot of Christian symbolism in there. There's a lot of Jewish symbolism. And then there are people who create decks that more strongly feature African descended people and indigenous people and all sorts of things. So yes, very cool. So
Okay,
yeah.
So Nick, we were
give-
gonna go along several lists of topics. Sorry,
Yeah,
Skip, maybe you were
let's
going
give-
the same place.
Let's give Raquel and Evelyn an opportunity. Then I would like to make a comment about Nick's transpersonal stuff, and then we should move on to the fifth tarot.
I just wanted to say that when I first comment on today's session, I talked about desire and what Spinoza had said, and I'm just going to remember everyone that Spinoza actually wrote about desire, and he's usually said in the book Ethics that desire was divinely guided. It was a divine expression within ourselves. So he was writing that when the Catholic Church was the only mediator between God and man. So that, for say, alone is just completely subversive, because it gives autonomy to the individual. But the thing is, it's not an actual, like, Samantha said that indigenous people may have not survived. So I kind of disagree on that, because we did survive. Brazil is still here. All Latin Americans are still here. So even though we don't have the same skin color, we're still here. And our culture and our experience of religion is so different. And I think that was what Spinoza was talking about, the possibility of one live its own truth without being guided by an institute, you know. At that time, at his time, was the Catholic Church, but today it could be anything, you know. But there's a difference also between consciousness and acting, you know, like, because I think that what we all doing here is like arguing the importance of consciousness and awareness, but that is limited. I mean, I think that from our experience, doing stuff and living it's different than like preaching about consciousness and awareness, because that may not be anything, unfortunately, if you don't have the practice. I mean, if you don't know how to engage with nature, it doesn't matter if you're saying that it's important that we have to, you know, protect. So I think there's a lot of nuances from everything that we're talking about, but the important thing is awareness is something, but action is another thing, and both had to work together, you know. And
Okay.
go ahead, Skip.
Well, Evelyn wanted to say something, so.
Oh, well, let me see if I can word this right. Desires, you know, desires, they can be dark and they could be light, meaning desires are, some are easy and some are hard. It all depends on either how bad you want it or how much you believe in it. And I believe that any desire is possible. Any desire is possible. And it's all about the belief. You know, and I agree with, I think her name's Rachel, the last lady that was there. She's talked about the indigenous people, and it's so true. We are still here, but most of us have grabbed onto Christianity, and that's where that's where that phrase comes from, where we're distinct, which we're not. It's the traditions are distinct, not the people. So
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So
Thank
one
you,
thing
Evelyn.
I wanted to talk about is that Nick has referred a number of times to transpersonal, and transpersonal is an idea that has been emerging, I think, pretty much since Jung, but based on Jung. So, for example, we see it heavily in the California Institute of Integral Studies, and we're having a transpersonal experience right now, because this group, it's attracting people from all over the world. And there's something je ne sais quoi that we have that draws us back here each week. And so it's it's a kind of religious experience. That's what transpersonal really means, that we're sharing something that we cannot put our finger on precisely, but we all want to be here each week. And there's several of us that have been here for well over a year, and I've been doing this for 5 years now, although not exclusively online until COVID. And so I just want to emphasize that when we say transpersonal, it's really a kind of religion, but it's a religion that doesn't necessarily have any rules. And there's been quite a discussion on the YouTube channel about different groups of people, and on this group too, different groups of people that have been held back or murdered by other groups of people over time. And that goes to the fundamental issue that Jung showed, the duality between love and power. Okay, the opposite of love is power. And so when you're murdering another group for some benefit, like staying in power, that's not very loving. And, certainly Christian churches did it, and humanity has been doing it all through time. Okay. And
Love is power.
And love is power, can be power if we understand it and understand how to use it. And so we're simply exploring how we can choose love instead of power. Okay. And yeah, go ahead, Annabelle.
Love over apathy.
I have a few things I wanted to say. My first comment, I was wondering with Gilda about the cloud forms around the hands in each of the aces, but we can get back to that. I feel like we've gone so far away. When Jordan asked about the burning, or brought up the burning of witches, that's something very close to my blood, I guess I have to say, because I'm descended from Cotton Mather, which makes me, all the Mathers, who are quite interesting as far as intellectualism and logos, of course, but I have to take Cotton Mather seriously in the way that he burned witches. And I think that you've just really hit on it, Skip. That's what that was about for him. I have to I have to accept Cotton Mather, for one thing, also because as a writer, I was introduced to Cotton Mather in a academic setting when I was quite young, and no one in my class knew that I had anything to do with any Mathers. And he was presented as a great writer of sermons and a great Christian, right? And of course, they were all, that particular lineage was brilliant. And they could also, not sure if the right word.
Very effective patriarchs.
Yes, right. And I think that they could rationalize, or maybe there's a better word for that, what they were doing, and they could back it up. They had all the source material.
Sure.
Passage in the Bible.
This is a standard issue that I've been talking about with Paul Vanderklay.
Yeah. So that's
for
what
years.
The power, right? That's what the power is. He knew,
right.
Mather knew
right.
that he was in the position of power, and he knew that the women were not in the position of power. And when they dared, right, to exert some sort of power, for example, healing someone is a very key piece of what Christianity is about. Jesus healed people. So when women walked around and healed people, then people like Cotton Mather would look back in their, in their Bibles and their scriptures, and they would say, wait a minute, this isn't what they're supposed to be doing, and just light the match and burn them on the stake.
Right.
So it goes, of course, goes way, way back, Joan of Arc, and you name it. So, yeah, I think those are most of my key points I wanted to make. But the other piece that goes back in the discussion, so there were three areas. One was about the clouds with the hands.
Mhm.
When I had to say something about Cotton Mather to defend him. And but the other thing is Uranus, and the fact that Buber was there is really interesting to me, because I did read Buber when I was young. And I think my family, I mean, my parents in their various heterodoxies were kind of fans of Buber. At the same time, they were fans of Velikovsky, right? So they had these notions of the universe that were trying to lay a plot, right? Trying to lay a plan on how things were formed, why they were formed. And a lot of it was in contrast to some of the bigotry and other issues of previous generations. So I've wondered about the role of Uranus as a meeting place, because I've always associated that place with Jung.
What
And-
is Eranos? I'm sorry. Eranos?
Okay.
You mean arrow? What is that?
No.
Let's talk
Let's
about it
talk
for a
about that.
moment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if you could skip
All right,
one,
so-
we can talk about it.
So
Yeah.
there's something that you need to get, which is a book
Thank you.
called Eranos.
Yes.
Eranos?
And it's the alternative history of something like the alternative history of 20th century thought. And it discusses Eranos, okay, in great detail. Eranos was a conclave that was held annually from 1933 until the present, only missing 1 or 2 years. And Buber did go. I have all 6 of the Eranos books here that Joseph Campbell edited, because he edited a lot of the
I've visited
Eranos
there
papers.
I've visited
Right.
there a few times. It's a wonderful place.
And it actually was at Ascona in
Yeah,
Switzerland, and
which
it
is
still
where-
is. And the location of it, there was a woman named Frida Captain, something. Anyway, she put her life's work into it, and she managed to persuade intellectuals, even during the war years, to come to Ascona, which is in Switzerland and therefore in a neutral country, to have discussions. And so there's a lot of very interesting information about Eranos. And I really recommend this book, Eranos, The History of Alternative Thought, I think, in the 20th century, and something like that. But anyway, I was actually invited to Eranos for 2020, and it's not a place, it's a concept. Okay, so it's a gathering once a year by intellectuals, and typically it's dominated by Jungians out of Zurich or people out of Pacifica these days, Pacifica Graduate Institute. And I became very close friends with Thomas Arst, and he had invited me to come last year, and he was the editor of the Jung's Red Book for Our Time. And unfortunately, he got COVID right in the early going, and he died last Easter Sunday. And the Eranos that I was to go to was canceled, and it's also canceled for this year. So I'm hoping that we will be able to attend Eranos next year. Yeah.
There's a discussion. I was mentioned by name in the chat, and I'd just like to give Zach 3197 a chance to explain himself. He said that my beliefs are dangerous. So Zach, if you want to talk about that, you can go ahead and say something, and I'd love to respond to you if you like. And if not, I'm totally comfortable with that too.
Yeah, well,
Oh,
okay.
no. Oh, no response. Good.
Well, this
That
is
had a
Well,
problem
Skip,
with
wouldn't,
my-
Skip, wouldn't
my
that
saying-
dial into where we cut off the political piece, because that's not really our place here.
that's right.
No, I'm okay
yeah,
with being political. I just want to point out to the
I'm not.
group
Let's
that
let's
he
try
has a
Not
not
here.
to be.
problem. He has
Not
a
here.
problem. He has a problem with the fact that I used the words white supremacy, and he says that he's surprised that you agreed with one of my statements. He also said that my beliefs are dangerous. So I just want to invite Zach that if you have anything to say, you can email me, or you can go ahead and be promoted to a panelist, or you can talk in the chat. But
Yeah.
I just want to give you that
Yeah, because
opportunity.
that comment's actually pretty vague. I don't really get any substantial information. I get a lot of flame, but no candle there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
it's like
was-
it.
He said, I don't think he said dangerous, but it looks like he said
He said dangerous. He said destructive.
destructive and divisive point of view.
Right.
Well, look, there are
You-
lots of
Do you
divisive
want to
points of
defend
view,
him?
and
Do you want to defend him, Nick?
It's one big
I
piece of
wanna
stained
defend
glass with lots of leading.
What were you going to say, Skip?
I was going to say that I'm about as liberal as I can get, and and so I would, but I don't really want to have a debate about racism and
Oh, there is no debate. There is no debate. I want to point out to the group, because here's a young man who has an issue with my using the words white supremacy, but has nothing else to say for himself other than that.
Okay,
So
well,
I
thank
just
you.
want to point that out.
You've highlighted it. Thank you. I agree
you're
with your
welcome.
point.
You're welcome. I think he should be
Okay,
invited
let
on
us-
as a panelist.
You know,
to say
Patricia
something that's
has
not in the
has
chat.
hung in here for quite a while because she was hoping we were going to talk about the fifth Tarot tonight. And so I'd really like to go to that topic. We're after 10 here, so we're really in overtime. and let's see, it's already midnight where Raquel is. So let's have a few thoughts about the fifth Tarot. Now, the first thing, and Samantha was holding up the deck, and I have a copy of the deck here. And so we've been studying it in various ways over the last year. And I personally very much love a lot of the imagery in the fifth Tarot. And I have to thank Patricia Flores for bringing it to my attention, and therefore to many of your attention also. And the unique thing about the fifth Tarot is that, unlike almost all other Tarot decks for the last 600 years, which have 72 cards, the fifth Tarot has 96. And that is because it adds 14 cards for a fifth suit. And that idea is an idea whose time has come. I'm hoping that we will see more Tarot decks with 5 suits, but I want to have a discussion about what this fifth suit actually is. So I'll go ahead and defer to Jordan for the moment, because Jordan has been active in many Tarot conferences and that sort of thing where the fifth Tarot has been discussed. So maybe you could talk about, and I don't mean the specific set of Tarot cards, I mean the idea of the fifth.
Yeah, the idea. Yeah, definitely. What's interesting to me is we have the quintessence from the 4 suits and the major arcana and the archetypes. And now with for example, a tarot with 5 suits, the fifth tarot, is there going to be a hextessence or a septessence, the 6, the 7? Because there's always one more than the number in the group. And that one more is the whole integrated unity of the group. So what's interesting to me is when the fifth Tarot came out, just from a 5 suit perspective, there was I won't call it a civil war. It was more kind of hilarious that in this esoteric field, you started to get some serious traditionalists. There were like 4-suit versus 5-suit racists, as it were. I mean, it was actually pretty vicious at times, and that kind of died down to everyone went to their decks. But from an historical perspective, I like to use the metaphor of the 4-character voice of the universe of the Om, which is AUM. And people will then say, well, Jordan, there's only 3 letters. The 4th character of the universe is the silence within, between, and all around. So here with 5 suits, now we have an implied 6. And so that's where I'll defer back to you, Skip, because I think that it's very important, that idea of the quintessence that actually naturally is present in the whole of a whole tarot deck with all 4 suits in the major arcana. Because at that point, once you get through the whole deck, in essence, you're playing with a full deck.
Well, I want to refer to Jung's 7 stages of consciousness for a minute, because that's relevant here. And it happens that the 5th tarot falls into the 5th stage of consciousness. And so I'll just describe it very briefly. It's very well covered in Murray Stein's book, which is called something like An Introduction to Jung's Map of the Soul. Jung's Map of the Soul, an Introduction, I think is what it's called. So that's where you can find this in great detail. But basically, the stages of consciousness are: first, participation mystique. Okay, that is where we are born. When we are born, we are wild animals. We know absolutely nothing. When some kind goddess comes along and puts a nipple in our mouth and we start to suck on it and we say, oh, gee, that's good. Right? And she's warm, something like that, right? And so what we do in the first 2 to 3 years of life is we try to mimic our parents and try to learn, what's going on around us, because it's certainly chaos on the day we're born. Okay, so the second stage of consciousness is that you think your parents are gods and goddesses. And, I explicitly remember the moment when I had this realization that my mother was a goddess. I couldn't put words on it at the time. I was 5 years old, but I remember the moment, where it happened, and approximately when it happened. I mean, I can date it to approximately probably late August or early September of 1952, believe it or not. But at that moment, I was 5 years old, and I looked up at my mother and I realized that she was a goddess. And I remember that numinous moment very clearly. Okay.
That's beautiful, Skip.
Thank you. And my father was a typical absent father who was off, either deployed in the Mediterranean or off at work. And so he was Jove. Okay, so he was a god too. Okay, so the third stage is organized religion, when we're taught that God is something else, and we learn all the rules of our specific religion.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, that started to fail in the 19th century. So by the time Nietzsche said God is dead and we have killed him, what he meant was that the Logos had killed the Christian presentation of God. And so we have secularists and rationalists and so on, including people like Freud, who can't connect with God. That was the fourth stage, where third stage was we started to learn all our religions. The fourth stage is, oh, there's no God, that's just baloney, and here's the proof that it's not real. Okay, and so the fifth stage is understanding that it is real. Okay, there is something there, and notwithstanding whether any one religion has grokked it perfectly, nonetheless, what Jung pointed out was that it's real. Okay, so the way I say it very simply is Nietzsche said God is dead, and in the next generation, Jung came along and found the living God, where he lives and how he goes about doing the work of the Godhead. Okay, and that's what happens in your real psyche. And that's what I've been building this YouTube channel about for the last 5 years. And I'm more convinced of it now than I have ever been. And I've been studying it for more than 30 years, 34 years this year. And there's no doubt that Jung put his finger on how the psyche really works in the human species. Okay, how it really works. And he put his finger on the fact that there is this transpersonal thing. There's synchronicity. There is all, numinous experience. And numinous experience are common to all religions. Okay, all religions are based on numinous experience. And so that's what Jung was about. So the reason that I'm interested in the fifth tarot as an idea is because it is going back to understand that there's something more that has been left out of all the tarots that have ever been made since the 14th century or 13th century in the four suits. And that is this concept that is beyond the physical world in every way. And so, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. And so there is something beyond what human beings have known for the last more than thousands of years. I mean, maybe going back to the Egyptians, there were cards like the tarot and the tarot decks. We can point to tarot decks that are very much like our tarot decks today that have not changed in 600 years. So we know that the human species did converge on what was in the traditional tarot, but we have a new stage of consciousness that's coming to us now as a species. It's not Christians or Jews or Muslims or Hindus or Buddhists. It's none of that. It's a species-wide realization that there's something further. And the reason I'm very taken with the idea of a fifth suit is to address that. Okay. And so I am going to talk about the fifth tarot because this is the only deck where somebody has actually made a fifth suit. So there's 96 cards, not 72. And they're on to something. I think they sort of missed the point on the fifth suit identity. Okay, that's my position. Okay, that in the fifth suit, the fifth tarot suit, the fifth suit, they refer to that suit as lotuses. Okay, and I am uncomfortable with that primarily because it gives a reference to drug-induced experience. Okay, and not that, there aren't values and points about lotus and lotus eaters and so on, but we've known about lotus eaters since the time of Ulysses, okay? And so, and I think that the fifth tarot, the thing that's different from all the other things, all the other suits, is the human being. We are the quintessence. We are the fifth thing. And so if we look at, let's suppose, most mammals, for example, there's no question that mammals all are into the pinnacles. Okay, every creature, whether you're an elephant or a tiger or whatever, you're into things in your world and bringing things in your world that keep your life going. We are, everybody knows that cats are intuitive. Okay, certainly everybody that's a cat lover knows that cats are intuitive. So that's the wands.
No, they're evil.
Well, and the dark side is they're evil, right? Because there's a dark side on these things too. And,
sorry, Raquel. Sorry.
And all creatures have discernment. Okay, and that's essentially what the swords is about, is differentiating what can I do to get my meal today. Okay, and whatever the creature is, every creature, all life lives on other life, honestly. Okay, all life lives on other life. When you go to the grocery store, everything that is there that you will eat was once alive. Okay, but we are the only creatures who really know that and can grok that and internalize that. And so we can discern, and certainly all creatures have feelings. I mean, there's, the stories of, dogs or panthers or whatever, or elephants mourning their young who've been killed or whatever. Those are immemorial. So we all have those functions together. But the only function that we don't have together is this quintessence, which is a connection to a higher self, not a higher being. I'm not saying that there's a puppeteer. I'm saying there's a higher self. And by the way, we're having an open session with Jorge Ferrer on April the 21st. It's a Wednesday, and it will be open not only to the advanced group, but to the Wisdom Path group. And his book is entitled Participation and the Mystery. And the point is, which Jung made at the end of Answer to Job, that we're all sons and daughters of God. And we all have a piece of God within us. And it is we that are going to create God's intention, nothing else. Human beings are going to create God's intention. And so that's where I'm going with it. I mean, and so when Jung says in a video that's here on YouTube, he's asked whether he believes in God, he says, I have no need to believe, I know. Okay. And so it's my position that the princess and the prince of quintessence or quints are people who have to believe still because they're learning the ropes of being a human being. So, if you're becoming a Christian, you have to believe until you know. And so you have to learn your catechism or whatever it is and believe your parents when they tell you if you go to Sunday school, things are going to be good for you. That's what the prince and princess of quints is. And the queen of quince is Sophia, and the king is I am, Yahweh, if you will. But it's that Yahweh that's in all of us, and we have to take up that responsibility and create the world that we want. Very simply. Okay, I'll shut up.
Well, I think you made a really good point about bringing the fifth suit in. The one thing about the fifth tarot is the last suit is, as you said, called Entitled Lotus. What I find interesting, I mean, in the initial one, there's somewhat of the radiance implied around her head, but that's almost more religious, iconic symbolism. There's more of an Eastern lotus section of the brain where they have a brain almost ghosted behind a lotus flower, and it's entitled The Thousand Petal Lotus. And it's a martial arts and Eastern religion, Eastern spirituality reference to the psyche, the thousand petaled unfurling of the lotus. And the thousand petals, meaning you'll get lost before you finish counting. I mean, so the number is more of a symbolic number of infinity. But it's interesting that they approach that, come at that in the fifth suit, but they never go all the way to the largeness of it in the last four in the quote unquote court cards. They're still just operations of the psyche psychologically, rather than being the quintessence you're referring to.
Well, and so I haven't fully analyzed the numeral cards as yet. And I want to think about how those should be, because what they had the tendency to do was to make reference to various spiritual traditions. And I'm not sure that that's the answer. Okay, I mean, that's what's implied by the lotus and all this new agey stuff where, okay, well, I'm going to go get enlightened if I become a Buddhist or if I do the Kundalini or whatever. And I can tell you that you won't. Okay.
Well, and I would support that statement in that when they cobble together multiple religions and spiritualities, they've created a tarot paint by number in regards to how the lay of the land goes about. It's it's like stained glass that doesn't have the cohesion, but there are lots of relationships.
My
and
homily
adjacency.
is we all face chaos way more than any of our ancestors did. In the 16th century, the average person got as much information as in one edition of the Sunday New York Times. And so we all, everyone that's listening to this, are overwhelmed with information right now. Because since the opening of the commercial internet, we all have access to almost all the information in the world, 99.5% of it. We don't have government secrets and company secrets, but everything else that ever was is open, okay? And we can all study it. It's chaos. I can tell you it's chaos, and that's what my ball represents. And the secret of all religions is that they give you a way to step out of it for a moment, whether it's by meditation or by prayer or by ritual or whatever it is. They give you a chance to step out of the chaos for a period of time so that you can take an objective view on your life. And that's the significance, it seems to me, of what the fifth tarot suit needs to be. Now, I'm not saying what it needs to be yet. I'm only saying, notionally what I think the court card should be. But I think that's what it's about, and it's my traditional homily in this YouTube channel.
Well, and the appendix of your homily is that you've indicated, I think, and maybe Jung said it, but I heard it from you first, that the traditional religious structure organized religion was basically a substitute, or was that there, in fact, psychotherapeutic event?
Precisely. And Jung said that explicitly in paragraph 367 of
Right.
volume 10 of the collected works. Okay,
Yeah,
which
I wanted to just lodge in a quote here that goes along with what you guys were saying about the idea of enlightenment and all this stuff. You know, I think it's really easy to kind of fall into these extremely lofty ideas as they relate to the tarot and all of this new age, pardon my French, bullshit. But I think the quote from Jung is apropos. I don't know where it's from, but he says, one doesn't become enlightened by imagining figures of light. One becomes enlightened by making darkness or making conscious their darkness.
Mm-hmm.
right.
Yes,
Precisely.
exactly.
Well, and right along with that, he
This is
said
why I'm
religion.
Yeah,
Okay,
by the way, I
but
can
I'm
tell you where
saying-
that I can tell you where that's from. It's from women in Europe.
Gilda has her hand raised, and then I would like to say something because
Yeah.
there's someone in the chat who keeps wanting me to talk about white supremacy and define white supremacy.
Samantha,
Please
please
don't
Ignore
do
them.
that.
either ignore him or invite him to a
the
private
chat. I've
conversation.
invited him to the chat. I've invited him to a private conversation, but he insists on continuing the conversation. We're talking about making the darkness light. I'm pointing it out to y'all right now.
Okay,
Samantha,
then.
every question is urgent to the asker.
don't,
You're not required to respond.
Yeah.
Samantha.
No, I agree, but Samantha, here's the thing about these people.
This is driving me crazy. It's a big problem. It's a problem in our country. It's a problem to me.
That's what they're trying to do.
I'm
Right,
tired of
that's what they're trying
talking
to do, Samantha. They're trying to get under your
You
skin.
don't have to
I'm
bite.
tired of being talked over. Then maybe you should talk to this man and define what white supremacy is to him. So I do
No,
not have to do it.
Samantha, I'm not going
I am
to.
enjoying, okay? I am enjoying this class. I want to participate in this class, but because no other white people are standing up for me, I have to defend myself. That's what white supremacy is. It pisses me off. I will talk to this person one-on-one. I've given my phone number. I've given my email. I've given my Instagram account. And no, I will not ignore it. Because I went to
Samantha, we
jail.
support
I was
you
That's all
here.
well and good.
Excuse me.
That's
We
all
support you
well
by
and good.
including
I
you
was
here.
arrested. I was
Samantha, he's
arrested. I was put in handcuffs. The cops used those smoke bombs things for peacefully protesting the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, while white men with machine guns got to storm federal buildings and go home without a scratch. I spent the night in jail during COVID. And it
agree.
pisses me off
Samantha,
that
you're
person
right.
is doing this. And I
You're
have a right to be
He's
angry.
achieving his
And I
purpose.
know that Gilda wants to talk. It's the reason I have to raise my voice to be heard.
Yeah,
And
Samantha,
so other people
he's
need to
winning.
deal with that instead of gaslighting me that white privilege and people who have justified white privilege by talking about white supremacy have used to shut me up. It's a very difficult conversation to have. I'm tired of having it, but that's all I have to say. And I will no longer respond to that person, Zach, unless you want to message me privately or be a panelist on this show.
Right, because he's winning, right? He's
Oh,
winning.
no, he's not.
Samantha.
He
No.
gaslighted you.
Yeah, he's
he's
got.
not.
Turn off the
Because I'm
gas.
yelling,
He
because
did
I'm
not
upset.
pay his
He's not
bill.
winning. You guys, I feel totally comfortable with being angry. I'm sorry if it makes anyone else uncomfortable,
No,
but
but
I'm
he's
okay with
winning.
it. I'm okay
Gets
with it.
under
No,
your
he's
skin,
not.
he's
He's
winning.
not winning, Skip. He's not winning. He's not winning unless some other white men start reading some fucking books on white supremacy and stop shutting down people like me who are getting angry for being harassed in the chat. It's not going to change.
He doesn't pay
I would
mortgage
like
in your
to
mind.
I would like to not be
He doesn't
talking.
deserve to
I
be
would like
there.
to pass the mic to Gilda because I want her to speak now.
Yes,
And I don't
but-
need to have any conversation. I don't need to be told how to feel or to not be upset. I do not believe this individual has won.
Nobody's telling you
I
to
feel
not be upset. Okay, this is the topic of this.
It's not okay.
Something.
It's absolutely
It's
not
not
okay.
okay. I agree
It's
with
not
you.
okay
It's not
that
okay.
I'm an educated woman, okay? Like, this is bringing me out of my comfort zone. I'm expressing myself very honestly. It's bringing me out of my comfort zone to have to explain to an individual who told me not to use the word. He said I was being divisive and whatever other word he used for using the words white supremacy. And when I asked him his racial background, he has refused to answer the question. That's because he's a white dude in the chat who has a problem with what I'm saying. So come on, come at me, bro. Be a panelist. You know, we can debate one-on-one, or you could call me tonight.
Well, look, if he comes on here and starts debating you
welcome
on
to
here,
that's
then
the
you're
problem,
both going to
because
be terminated.
He gets to do this. He gets to do this behind a laptop.
Because this is not the topic of this group.
No, it's not. I would like to get back to the tarot and enjoy that, but I have to say, I have to speak up. I'm sick of it. It's gaslighting. This is a Jungian group, so I'm sure you guys know about psychology and pop psychology. Gaslighting is when you try to convince someone they're crazy because you don't agree with them, or you try to convince them their reality isn't real. So don't tell me white supremacy doesn't exist when I spent the night in jail, okay, for doing nothing. That shit was traumatizing. That is white supremacy. Go ahead, Gilda. And also Google it if you really want to know. Google it. Go read a book.
Okay.
Hello,
Zach
everyone.
finished from this channel. I've just
No,
taken him
don't
out
do
of
that.
the
Skip.
channel.
Don't do that. You don't have to do that.
Yes,
You
I
don't have to
do.
that.
Because
I made my point.
Samantha, people like that have handles on the carpets under their feet. They're asking for you to yank on them.
If you should feel uncomfortable too. All the white men on this panel should feel very uncomfortable.
okay, Samantha,
enough.
I have hidden.
Then
Zach.
I will leave. This is the second time I've left class over this. I will leave.
You
It's
don't have
not,
to
that's
leave.
not enough. Jordan, you telling me that's enough is part of the problem, okay? You guys are white. I'm sorry if it offends you for me to say that you're white. You are, okay? So,
Yeah.
so you don't
That's
get to
enough of you saying what
don't get
anyone
to
else
tell me how
needs to do. That's it. I'm not saying what you need to do.
You're
That's the
literally
thing.
muting me.
That's why you're supported here, is that we all have a
No, I'm not.
voice.
No, I'm not supported. I have
What
to
do you mean
fight
you're
to be
not
supported.
Well, I don't
I
understand.
have to fight to be supported because you feel uncomfortable that I'm pointing out whiteness. And Beth knows what I'm talking about. She was shaking her
No,
head.
that you're,
I know Evelyn
you
knows
don't
what
know
I'm
what
talking
I feel. You can only know what you feel.
Okay.
Yeah.
No,
So
no,
I'm not,
Alright,
we can't
I
project
know
any
being
longer.
arrested.
Samantha,
I can know being arrested. I can know being arrested, Jordan. Have you been arrested? Have you been arrested?
I have.
You know, Samantha, it's no fun
No,
until they call 911.
Samantha, I'm sorry, but I don't
It's-
agree with you. You just being
Yeah.
so
Fine.
rude.
You don't have
You're
to.
being
No,
rude.
I'm not being rude.
You
That man was
are being
rude.
so rude.
That's
This is
gaslighting
Yeah.
me. I'm raising my
You're-
voice. I'm not-
Samantha, you went to the guy on the chat, you went after him and you badgered him so he could like
Scroll back up in the chat and see
I
what he said.
did.
Scroll back
But
up in
now
the
you're
chat.
taking it out here on
Miles
us.
Skip was saying
Well,
something
maybe I
important.
should. Maybe I should.
This is not the
Why?
place for you to
There's
fight
several
about
times, if
this.
you go back through this channel, if you go back through this channel several times when I've tried to talk about race, Jordan has made a comment like he takes his hands off the he puts his hands on the steering wheel when the cops pull him over.
This is
Okay,
not
Samantha,
the place to
Samantha,
do this.
your points are well taken.
Good.
Okay,
should
yeah, they're well taken. I've removed this fellow from the channel.
And I want to say
permanently.
to anyone watching
Okay.
this and to you guys, I don't agree with him being removed.
Okay, this
That
channel
doesn't
is not
fix the
about this issue. Okay, if you
Right.
want to have a channel with me on politics, I have a.
It's not politics. It's my life.
All right, but it's not the topic of this group or
Hey,
this channel.
Stop muting me, Nick.
All right, so look, I'm happy to have this conversation with you in another forum, not here. It isn't the purpose of this.
And I've
group.
told you I'm willing to have that conversation as well. I've told you
Okay,
that.
so let's do it. We can do it tomorrow.
I don't even want to have the fucking conversation. I don't like it.
All right, good.
I just want to say that. I will have it because I have to have it because I'm sick of this shit happening. I'm sick of you guys not learning how this happened in Oakland, California in 2021. I've been called nigger twice in the 2000s. I'm not making that shit up by white people.
I'm not doubting
And
it.
the only reason I don't talk about that is because it's fucking traumatizing and terrible. And I'm
That's
tired of being
obvious.
told by a guy who is a white man who will not just say he's a white man, tell me I can't use the words white supremacy, which is obvious to me and any educated person that there is a fucking problem about race. And white men need to take responsibility. If you care, you will take responsibility. You'll do your part, like you're listening to me right now. And you won't talk over me, Jordan, when I'm talking about something that you could stand to learn about. From both my lived experience and my education, my minor from New York University, in addition to my lived experience, as ambiguous as I look to you. And that's all I have to say. I'm not going to leave. I'm going to mute myself, and I would like someone else to talk, preferably Gilda, but this is a democratic process, so I'm not the boss here.
Thank you. Gilda.
Well, I feel for you, Samantha. Thank you for what you had to offer. We were there once. We're not there anymore. We had to move on for different reasons. Female, whatever. I'm Spanish, whatever. So I wanted to comment on the fifth tarot and the conversation on the symbology behind that. Some of it looked ancient, or I don't have that deck. But I will offer that from working with dreams, and whether it's lucid or one goes inside, which I often do plenty. And I have had the experience of that 1,000-petal lotus. I didn't know what it was. To me, it's more like sacred geometry. It exists, it is there. So it's real. It's not something that I inherited from, that I saw somewhere. And then I went to research it on the internet, and I found a rug. It was $30,000, a round rug that had exactly to the small patterns were even the same as what I had experienced. The entire space had a center, and out of it came out all this lotus. So that's one thing. And I have had other experiences which bring forth images that are related. And even though ancient people, a lot of them saw these things in their psyche, in their meditation, and that's why they are used. And that's very different than creating a letter that means something, or a number, or a quality. Is an experiential psychic experience of what something looks like. What's in the inner life. It might be a microcosm of that I'm looking at. And I've also had an experience, this being wide awake in front of another yogi friend. Then all of a sudden I said, oh, why don't we practice this? And of the halo that the Christians often put in their angels is white, a white round thing like this. It was being tapped, beep, 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 and it was like a fluorescent light, round. So, and I don't meditate on seeing an angel this way or the other. That just came out of the inner psyche. So whether it's I'm an ancient soul and it came from somewhere else, or I cannot verify that, but I can verify that the many petal lotus and different other lotus, I've seen the one with the 4 points and the whole thing. I have had the experience.
Yeah, in terms of the aura that you're mentioning, Samantha currently has a huge aura around her. For those of you that are familiar with auras, it's very pronounced. And also Annabelle has a good aura around her head, and Evelyn has one above her head. They're easier to see if there's it's a light surface behind one. But I tend to be able to see them on all of us. I see it with Beth. I see it with Nick. I see it right in these images that we have on the screen right now. And seeing an aura is a natural phenomenon. My wife, I remember we were getting into gemstones and things about, I don't know, 35 years ago when we first got together. And we were sitting in the dark in our living room chatting. We were probably 20 or 30 feet apart at the time. And we had the lights off, but it was downtown Washington, so it was light. And she says to me, well, I'm interested in this aura business. I'd really like to know what that is. I've never seen one. And I said, I see one around your head right now. She says, you do? So let's put that to rest right now, and I'll teach everybody how to see an aura.
Was
Okay.
that Deb who you did that to?
Say it again.
Was that Deb?
Yes, that was Deb. Okay, so what you do is tonight when you're in your bedroom, you hold your hands up over your face with your ceiling as the background. Probably it's a light background, and you just hold your fingers about an inch apart and move them up and down against one another, and you will see the aura that exists between your two hands, very simply. Okay, and once you see that, you'll be able to see auras all the time. And so they are very real, and so artists have been picking up on it in sacred imagery for thousands of years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if someone is very spiritually connected, or in Samantha's case, very worked up emotionally, the auras tend to take on color and shape.
Well, they emanate with the energy. I mean, when the intensity rises, they correspondingly give you a bigger sphere.
Well, we have to remember this dictum that in every atom, the distance between an electron and the neutron, in terms of their size, is the difference between New York and LA. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So a neutron's size is as far away from that electron in that atom as a basketball would be between New York and LA, something like that. Think of it that way. Mm-hmm. And so there is energy that's going on around us all the time. There's no doubt about it. I mean, it's.
And despite that distance, they orbit gravitationally in their own valence shells. I mean, that they stay in their own little mini solar system.
Right. And so there's just no question that we're all connected. I mean, we see it from our cell phones today. You know, how is it that all the people in New York can be carrying cell phones and they can all be having separate conversations at the same time? Well, all those waves of energy are passing through you all the time. Mm-hmm. And they're all coming through at different frequencies. And so
I'd like to mention something about that chatter. Walking my dog last week, it was raining, so I just had to, well, it's raining, so I'm made of water, be comfortable. Of course, she stopped because she liked it. And I noticed a big screen TV in the window. And then I noticed the strangest thing. No image lasted longer than 3 or 4 seconds. So there is a constant state of arousal trauma just in the chatter of the visual stuff, not to mention the words and volume thrown. And those waves are also contributing to the ones you were talking about. That constant barrage of change for things that don't really have any substance except to keep you never really settling in.
And, it's,
And I
there's
think-
no question about it being real.
Right, at all.
It's definitely real, and it's definitely physical in the logos sense.
It's real, like historical trauma is real. And I'm
Surely.
just tired of being told, like, I have to bring it in. I have to calm down. You guys know my heart. Like, you know that I'm a peace-loving person.
Right.
I'm a-
And Justin suggests that
I don't want to hear
Justin,
what
Justin,
Justin say unless he I don't want to hear it. God bless. Like, I don't want to hear it because I think that we need to give more of a voice to people who are not white men.
that's what
I love
he's
you guys,
saying.
but
If you would like to hear what he has to say, he says,
I don't know if I have a choice. I don't want to hear it. I just want you guys to listen to me.
yeah, you have no choice because I'm going to read it to you. I would like one day we could support Samantha and devote a streaming to take that talk and with just that one topic. It is also a psychological problem and an archetypal one, which Samantha no doubt experiences in her everyday life. And
it's
so-
annoying because a lot of white people feel comfortable saying these things to me because I'm fair skinned, and that's okay. It's the same reason why we have the vice president we do instead of a darker skinned person, because and why she's vice president and not president yet. That's what people are comfortable with, and you know what? That's fine. But I'm just saying I do encounter this a lot because of my.
I'm sure you do.
And
I'm
I'm
sure
not
you do.
saying I have
But
it harder
But
than
Samantha, you're rejecting somebody who's trying to be helpful and supportive of you.
I'm
So
not rejecting. I just don't like having to the burden of having to think about race and having to educate other people all the time. I honestly don't, but I guess I have to because it's in my lineage.
yes, you have
I
to.
have to because white people feel comfortable saying some really crazy shit to me, and I love them, so it's the same reason that I'm trying to calm down because I do love you guys in this room. But Jordan, you should not be talking over, like you should not be talking over.
Patricia has
I do hear you,
gently-
Samantha, and I do hear you fully. And I think that that's an important thing you just expressed to me that I don't only take to heart, that is resonant and important for me in my own way of expressing, to be able to listen to what you were expressing there in its entirety and just listen and hear you.
Okay, Patricia has gently raised her hand and asked to speak for the first time in weeks, so I would love to hear from Patricia.
I'm sorry. Well, first of all, I want to say that I am with Samantha, and I understand what you feel. But if you allow me now, I would like to talk about the fifth tarot, because I don't really understand if you guys accept the idea of a fifth suit or not. It's not clear to me, but I would like to just share with you guys what I feel about having a fifth suit. I think that we humans tend to love dogmas. We kind of don't like changes, and we become dogmatic. And change, evolution is something that we have to be in. We have to participate. So we can, overcome all those problems like racisms that Samantha was talking about. We have to change. We have to move on. We have to evolve.
Okay.
And when these people made this fifth suit, I found it interesting. And I would like to comment about something that can illustrate the need to get out of our reality boxes. We have to open doors, we have to open windows, not to close them. When biologists, PhDs, when biologists began to talk about, there might be quantum biology, physicists start laughing at them. They were like, oh, those scientists are crazy. How come they are talking about quantum biology? And nowadays, they have to swallow their pride and they have to swallow their words, because they have proved, thank God technology is so advanced that now you can see other stuff that you were not able to see before. So they have seen that photosynthesis is an example of quantum biology. That is going on there. So here's what I feel. I don't know if this person or the group that made the fifth tarot did a right job or not. I'm learning about tarot. I'm still learning. I think I know so little, but I think they have break the ice. They have break a wall that's been for a long time, and that doesn't necessarily, it's a good thing. I mean, to have walls or to have those strict ideas, it's those dogmas. Rupert Sheldrake talks about the dogmas in science. And you would think that dogmas are just in religion, but no, they are also in science. And we have to be open to evolve. We, as I said, we need to get out of our reality boxes. That's all I wanted to say. So, but thank you. I mean, I'm always learning with you guys a lot. I am so interested in tarot. I didn't do it for a long time because I was raised Catholic. And, you always get that idea that, oh, those are satanic things. Those are evil things. But now I am learning, and I'm learning with you guys. So let's keep learning. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. I agree with you entirely. But at the same time, there's also a sixth and seventh layer of stages of understanding in the Jungian idea. And in order to get our species to that level, that seventh level, we need some structure. I mean, we build up on skeletons. Okay, so the catechism and the Bible and everything we learn is a ladder by which we all learn. And so my idea on the fifth tarot is not because it should be set in stone, but that because we need to offer a structure that our fellow men and women can understand, our fellow humans can understand, so that they can move through. Because everybody in this group has been looking at tarot for a long while. And so we understand that it's not the end all be all, but oh, by the way, it hasn't changed in 600 years. So it must relate to a lot of folks around the world. It surely does. And it's been a valuable roadmap, but the map is not the territory, as is said. And we need to learn the map so that we can live our lives off the map.
Do you know that I like tarot? I like art, I like that right brain type of thing, but I just feel like I also have people who have been involved in teaching and politics in my lineage, and it's just like it's not easy. It's just not easy to be free, because there's a lot of people who just don't know things or don't care. And to me, I just think something like understanding the things I was talking about. I think more white people should have an understanding of of history. And I know people don't want to feel personally to blame, it's a defensiveness, right? It's a defensiveness, but I get that, but I think that has to go, because I'm gonna do whatever I need to do to be happy in my life, but I'm just saying, like, no wonder people like me like go a little bit crazy sometimes, or just like get emotional, because it's so it's everywhere. It's just
Sure.
everywhere. And I think that the only way we can change it is if people start listening, and in a way it does start with I know I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to like put myself out there, and maybe later I'll be like, oh, I probably won't regret it, honestly, because I'm also selfish enough in the sense that like it's not selfish, it's self-preserving, but to like be loud about it. But a lot of people aren't. Like, I'm just more extroverted than some people. Like, I know other people who have felt that and been so hurt because they've been silenced. Like, people I'm literally related to, like, or some who are no longer with us, and it's just really, I don't want to carry it though all the time. I wish I could just shrug it off, but it's not easy to. So I'm not trying to be a victim or anything like that. I have hope for the future, but I'm just saying I guess it spills onto other people sometimes, because I feel it very deeply, to the point where like socially most people would have stopped talking by now in my position. So I'm sort of abnormal like that. And I do appreciate, I see that you guys are like trying to help, and I know it's not the Samantha show on here. Like, I get that, but I don't know. It might be hard to sleep tonight. I don't know.
Can I say how much I appreciate the courage it took to blow the cap off that goddamn volcano? Because that's some living earth pain. And it's not real or not real. It is. And I feel that. So thank you for your courage, and know that I see strength in the ability to be vulnerable, because vulnerability is the birthplace of courage.
Here's what I literally think that people need to the United States needs to give reparations to Black people. They've done it for other groups. They should do it for Black people. That's literally what I think. Maybe then I wouldn't be upset. I mean, that's what I think. And if you guys can research it, you can look into it if you want. I don't want to have to defend my position, but I'll just start by saying that. Maybe someone can hear what I'm saying in the audience or in this.
Given how much money we've given to the 1% in this country in the last 8 years, I have no objection whatsoever.
It's the least that can happen. It's literally the least. And of course it'll only be, it's the same reason why Barack Obama was elected. And guess what? I know that was symbolism too. Okay. I know he didn't get to change as much as, I know that, but it was important symbolism. Symbols are important. Representation matters. We know about symbols and archetypes because of the tarot. See how I did that? I brought it all back.
Yeah. Can I say something?
Yeah.
It's magical. Magical.
Go ahead, Raquel.
I think there's a lack of boundaries going on in this group, because honestly, I come from a different place. I am always talking about politics. I'm always making, I think every comment that I make in this group is about politics in some shape or form. But I think that's just a huge rudeness of what Samantha is doing. I'm sorry, but I have to.
That you feel that way. I'm sorry.
Okay, just let me finish. Okay. I think that it's rude because you just went off on people, like obligating them to speak, and you just don't have the right to do that. And I know that you guys you keep pointing out the white people that they have to educate themselves. Yes, they have. So you don't have to put that obligation onto yourself. And every time that you put that obligation,
talking about it, and you're defending it.
This is what you do. You just keep talking over people all the time.
That's fine. I don't mind.
You don't have like the education. No, it's not about caring. It's just about
I don't have education.
much.
Did you
No,
just say
I mean about education, about like respecting my voice right now. No, you don't. You
Mhm.
don't. Okay.
That's not
and
true.
you
I think
do
you and I
that all the
disagree.
time.
You
Oh
and I
my
disagree. I'm
God.
not the only one who did it. Why aren't you telling Jordan? Jordan talks over people all the time. So I'm sorry that my dramatic expression of my emotions makes you feel uncomfortable. I'm sorry. I'm sorry
It
that
doesn't
I
make me
did
feel
interrupt.
uncomfortable.
Right,
It kind of
I
makes me
did
feel
interrupt you.
mad because
I
if I
did
did that,
interrupt
I will
you.
be like shot in my head because I'm a
Well,
Latino
that's
person.
unfortunate. That's wrong too. That's
No,
fucked
no,
up.
but the point is,
Yeah.
you don't listen to other people.
I do listen
There's
to other
a
people.
lot of
I'm not going to
ways
defend myself against that anymore.
communicate.
I will sit and
So-
listen to you now.
Yeah, Samantha, we're your friends. Please be a little bit gentle with us.
There's different ways to communicate what you're saying, and what you're doing is just
If you
telling
haven't
people
told, if you haven't
how
talked,
you're
I'll say it
angry,
calmly.
how
If you
you're
haven't had a
upset
problem
all
with
the
Jordan
time,
raising
because
his
you are
voice,
embracing a responsibility
you have
that's
a
not
problem with me.
yours.
I don't think we are friendly. Sorry, Raquel. No, it's not okay.
No, we're not friendly because
I'm
I am
sorry
not
you
an
think it's
American.
rude. I'm
You
sorry
will
you think
never
it's
be
not worth
friendly.
it
That is the point.
for me to raise my voice, having experienced trauma related to these things. I'm sorry that you think that that is rude, Raquel.
What
I'd
about
like,
the
I'd
trauma
like
that
to interrupt both of you to point out that Raquel was speaking and Samantha, you interrupted her many times, and I would like to hear what Raquel had to say.
Okay, I would like to hear it too.
Me too.
What about the trauma that I have experienced through all my life of being a Brazilian and not being able to be looked at as someone, as an equal to you guys? Look how I am expressing myself. Look how I speak the English. Look how much I have to educate myself just to be seen for you, by all of you guys as an equal. And look now of all the concentration camps that you guys have filled up with Mexican people. What about that? And the point that I'm making is every time that you scream, every time that you cry, you just pointing out your hurt and
Yes,
your feelings,
and I'm okay with that,
and
Raquel.
you're
I'm
angry.
okay with that, Raquel.
That is not.
But I'm glad you are now talking about the trauma of
That
your
is-
people. If
Raquel, finish.
that opens something up where you can talk, good. But until you tell Jordan not to interrupt other people, no, I don't think it's cool. I don't think rude. Maybe it's seriously, I'm sorry you think it's rude. It's not rude. It's being passionate about something, and I'm trying to restrain
No, it's
myself
just being
now.
rude.
Sure.
I
Okay.
do not silence
Different
Jordan
story. I'm
because
sorry you think
Jordan
I'm
is
rude.
not my problem.
Even though I have taught, it's not your problem. Okay.
No,
Okay.
the education of that Jordan might have had about race, it's not my problem, and
Well,
it's
I'm glad
not
you think
my
it's not. In
place
America,
to
it
teach
is my
him.
problem. It is my problem. And it's not
It's
a
not
problem I
yours.
should have to carry alone.
No, it's not your problem.
Mhm.
You're
And
making
I'm
it your
glad that
problem.
my
It's
getting
different.
passionate about that made you feel safe to start talking to the group about your Brazilian background, which, by the way, I have made reference to you many times. When you were new in this group, if there were times where we had to translate meanings of things, or I asked a question about your native language, I did that.
So,
I'm-
so lighten up, Samantha. This-
Stylistic.
there's enough of this.
Looking like I'm
Really,
crazy.
honestly, Samantha, that's enough. Okay, I want you to stop. Okay. There are 11 other people on this
Great,
session,
okay, enjoy your
and
company.
we all have a right to say something.
Yes, you do.
too.
And I have a right to leave. I'm going to leave.
Okay, that's fine. You may need to recoup yourself, and so all right, fine.
Thank you for dealing with, or trying to deal with Samantha's pain.
Yeah,
And it
I
made
mean,
me
we've certainly,
really uncomfortable.
we've certainly all been suffered here for a while now, and I understand Samantha's pain more than you know. We have been talking separately for weeks, and she has a lot of it. We all have a lot of it, of course. And that's what life is about. And we all have to figure out what our beef is, and then figure out how we're going to get on with life, considering our beef. And we all have one. We all have many, probably.
And that's why we're here, Skip. That's why we come here with you, is to help us deal with our beef.
Yeah, I mean, that's what.
It's not for nothing that, independent of the quality of what she's saying, I think pretty much everyone in the group and multiple people on the YouTube channel of varying racial backgrounds have qualms with her method of communication. So I don't think it's
right. Okay, and at the same time, it's my fault because I should have terminated that guy long ago. Okay, and so I would ask all of you to help me on the YouTube chat if people are gaslighting us. There are trolls out there who would like nothing more than to destroy our conversation. And
honestly not my read on it, but okay.
Well, and I, from a Texas background, I can play her dad, and I can hold a shotgun on the coffee table when a guy comes to call and go, okay, your turn, son. Tell me, and keep those people from coming into her house, so to speak. I mean, she doesn't need that. She's on a courageous path opening up, and there's a lot of pain, and it's gonna hurt more. But she's there and she's doing it. And I know the yelling and the screaming, and there's a point when that stops. But right now she has so much, and our modern environment also, she's taking responsibility for things she shouldn't the whole of history.
Yes.
And that the problem with that is that's normal. Unfortunately, you have to kind of dial your feet into the mud to understand where you came from to then pull yourself out of it.
Apparently, the guy in the chat that was removed, he was Vietnamese. So I don't really understand what the
I don't look at race anymore like that, and I'm not going to say I'm colorblind because that's a bunch of horse shit. What I see is a lot of people just like ninjas. You can't tell because they're dressed like everybody else, and you just do not know what someone else's perspective is, so you don't take it and don't put it on them.
Well, what I think is that all of us are individuating, okay?
Right.
And I acknowledge that I am still individuating, and all of us are.
Yes.
And that person is also individuating. However, he's at a stage of individuation which requires him to be in confrontation all the time. Okay. Young men sometimes have to take up boxing or something like that, or join the Marines in order to work it out. And so my perspective on it in terms of this YouTube channel is I recognize that they're individuating. I want them to take their individuation someplace else and work on it elsewhere, because it's not part of our work.
Right.
And
poison goes in the bottle over there, not in the pool. So
something like that.
Okay.
And so, I'm sorry to have allowed that to go on as long as it did. I apologize to everyone for that. And Samantha,
thank you for the time and attention you've been giving her outside of here, because I can tell too, I know there's a certain older brother quality where of course she's going to come at me somewhat. Took me a while to grok that I need to sit back and allow her to learn how to approach someone who's just older because I know she's talked about she's the youngest, and she doesn't get listened to, or she gets kidified in the car even, and she's 30 or around, and so
she's 35.
35. So she never got the "you are progressing as an adult." She got the "you're the young one at the end of the line." I mean, so, and she's got a big dad, a surgeon. I think he's a cardiologist. That can be a shadow to crawl out from under, and and you end up going inside sometimes, so you can come out the other way because the shadow's too dang long. But so thank you I think this group, from my perspective, has maybe for one of the first times, I don't know completely her history, but it's given her a place where she can open up and slam her to the wall a couple of times. I mean, and we'll give her a new car. And I don't know if she's ever had that.
Well, we are giving her a new car, I think.
Yeah.
And by that we mean a structure within which she can live, and she'll be the first to tell us that she had problems with substance abuse in her youth, and she's very courageously worked her way out of it. I see how effectively she has done that over time, and she's a smart girl. She's got a degree from NYU, and so I respect her concerns and her pain, and but I'm not trying to run a mental health group here, okay? And so I have to find an appropriate balance. And Raquel, I'm sorry if we didn't get to hear what you wanted to say. So if you would like to speak on it, please do.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to point it out that to me it's just really rude the way that she's saying everything, because I think that I get it where she's coming from. I get it why, and I get it like all the aspects of her life, but I kind of didn't have that, so I just had to learn it the worst way possible, like losing shit and opportunities, and I think that, okay, she has her life, she has her pains and everything, great, but I've been politically activist here in Brazil for since 2013. I've dealt with police riding horses, all that thing of gas. I've been dealing with that for years of my life now. And I know the difference, I know the difference between being with you guys and communicating with you guys in a respectful manner without actually hating you guys because you're all Americans, and quite frankly, if I was radical enough, to go off screaming against everyone, I would never participate in a group like that. I mean, in my political party that I participate here in Brazil, that's kind of that will not be well seen, because I'm being a good person to a country that's done so wrong to everyone that lives around here. So I think that, okay, she brings the theme about race, but I think it's just so rash, and I think that just creates more anger than understanding. And I think that if you have to learn to communicate with the other side, if you want to not just exist, but to create another world, because I do not want to I don't want to kill any one of you guys, and I don't want to be at the side of the world that just, wants the other people to stop existing. But in order to that happen, I have to be understanding, and I have to know when I can communicate some stuff and when it's just not my place to do it, and I think that's just,
well, that's about maturity and growing up.
Right.
And
yeah.
and
I think that's beautiful that you guys want to protect her, but
well, look, sometimes we get out of control. I mean, Samantha tonight couldn't control it, okay, and it's happened to all of us, I'm sure, at various times. I lost a marriage over it, so I know that. And in terms of politics, and maybe this is the most radical thing you do in your politics, Rick, was talk with 10 Americans. and we thank you for it. We're
About witchy topics.
Right. Yeah. But I would just observe that everything is politics. Okay, everything is politics.
Yeah.
Whether it's whether I'm going to be on time for dinner, or whatever it is in your family, in our lives, it's all politics. And that politics means learning to live within the environment that you're in. And if that's not attractive to you, then you have to learn how to change it.
yes, but change it in a way that I will not lose myself in it,
Yeah, sure.
Change it in a way that I will not kill myself doing it. I want
Right.
to live.
Yeah, all of us want to live.
Yeah.
So I just want to say this, and you guys, correct me if I'm wrong, and hate me if I'm completely off base, but there's just a degree of common courtesy for fellow human beings that was missing from that conversation completely.
I'm sorry, what did you say again, Nick?
There was a lack of consideration and just common courtesy for fellow human beings in that conversation.
I like
Right.
How screaming at one person and not even allowing a reply is really that different from fascism. It's kind of crazy to just be yelled at like that for an hour and a half and not even be able to say anything back, even in spite of the fact that we're all abundantly supportive, even though we all have our faults and none of us are perfect in our relationships with one another. I still think no matter how difficult of a topic, we should at least maintain some respect for one another.
Yeah. Evelyn has made a fair comment here about may we all wind down to peaceful thoughts tonight.
Amen.
And so we're already an hour and a half overtime here, Evelyn. So winding down would be welcome from my point of view.
We're going to have to walk to the gas station. We drove the car too far.
Right. And so, but Evelyn, I'd love to have your thoughts about how that might be achieved. Do you have some thoughts about how to wind down? I mean, I'm trying to do it just by being
Oh my
Skip,
God,
but
so funny. Sometimes you have to find the humor in it,
yeah.
there is peace in chaos. There is, and we do have to go through the chaos, to find some light in it. And for me to find peace right now is basically just quieting my mind and detaching from the emotions that came through this screen tonight. And for me it's quieting my mind and putting on some 432 vibrational frequencies, and just thinking about a good day for tomorrow. That's it, keeping it simple. Yeah, we love to complicate things.
432 being hertz, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, I was
Hendrix
sharing.
used to be tuned to that, and
I was
now
sharing.
That.
I was sharing before that I think Samantha works with individuation and dreams, that I had an experience while in lower states in which I was able to witness the energy of emotion being utilized was what catalyzed a particular narrative. And this, in other terms, is called possession, right? That a certain load of being takes over, and there's nothing else to be seen. That's so, in a way, that the emotional was fueling a story around it that she wasn't able to get out of.
Yeah.
Well,
And that is possession is one of the words that
then
Jung uses.
Yeah.
And then syllabically, she would come up with a word that she heard under the screaming that had the same amount of syllables, started with the same letter, ended with the same letter. Raquel says education. That's not the word she came up with. She came up with but she heard she made it up in the middle, so that there's a lack of grounding. You got 2 feet down. So yeah,
Well, it's a part of the psychic that all of a sudden takes over. It's like there's
Right.
certain books, maybe parts. So they play with parts, and you talk to them. You have a dialogue, and you write. Eventually, you discover, oh, well, who was it that was really there, and what did they want? So
there's
So
a really
we
good
were-
book by Richard
that's-
Schwartz.
Yeah.
That's
We're-
you were the one you've been waiting for, and it deals with parts, but it comes down to you finally get to the point where the parts aren't allowed to hijack the mouth. They can only send you memos,
right, exactly, something to that nature.
and you can drop them
Because-
in the trash.
Because
What-
what
what I
goes-
ca-
what goes under the iceberg is there's a lot that we don't know and we don't use.
Yeah, certainly.
Sure. And we have to make ourselves sensitive to these things in terms of how we deal with them. I mean, this was very reminiscent of my first marriage and what was going on, where, whatever misdemeanor I did on any given day, and there were plenty of them, I would get that kind of behavior addressed toward me. And unfortunately, when I was 40 years old, I did not have the tools to deal with it. I didn't know what to do about it.
Right.
And so finally, my 8-year-old daughter sent a note down our spiral staircase saying, "Please stop fighting." And I looked at the note and I realized right there that there wasn't any way to stop, because I had tried plenty of times. I mean, if you imagine tonight times, thousands, it's like a drip onto porcelain, and eventually it wears through. And then, so my only choice at that time, because I didn't have other tools, was to leave. And so that's what happened. And I, however, wasn't abandoning my wife. I still love her. I still love her as my sister, as a sister, but not as my spouse anymore. I don't live with her anymore. And, I invested quite a lot of time and energy into my daughters over the years. And that has given us good relationships now when they're in their 40s. But it was a tough time. And, I firmly believe, and, this is Ann Belford Ulanoff, and Samantha didn't give me the opportunity to say who she is really, but she is one of the most profound writers in the Jungian sphere. She was professor of psychiatry and religion at Union Theological Seminary, and incredibly well spoken. And she wrote about the devil's trick. Okay, and the devil's trick is for you to blame the individual rather than something else that's going on. Okay, and
well,
so
in that vein, I would like to extend heartfelt thanks, Raquel, first for in a very emotionally heartfelt way, you expressing and sharing to us how you came about it, but secondly, for stepping in as a stabilizing force to literally just drop the anchor in shallow water and tug on the chain to just stop the boat.
yeah,
I appreciate that. And Annabelle, you stepped in as well to reinforce. Evelyn, you had chat going, and Gilda as well. I mean, the group, I felt that it's like the rounded the wagons. But Raquel, you led the charge to uncharge the situation. So I'd like to express deep thanks for the wisdom and the way you went about it. And
absolutely.
frankly, in a very professional, psychological way, you did.
Right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I agree, Raquel. It was great.
Yeah. So anyway, my point is that in my life, I kept a relationship with my ex-wife. She and I have dinner with our spouses fairly often. It's amazing how when you have an ex, they and their families never disappear from your life because they keep showing up at weddings and funerals and all sorts of things. And so when you marry somebody, you got to really think about that, because if it doesn't work out, you're still going to be stuck with them for the rest of your life, especially if you share children. And so, anyway, the point about the devil's trick, though, is that we can't, if we blame Samantha, our friend Samantha, the excellent tarot reader that she is, then that's the devil's trick. That destroys an organization like ours. And so we have to understand that the thing that got away from Samantha, and it got away from me for a period of time tonight, is not Samantha, and it's not the way she feels about us as a group, and so on. And so we...
and that's actually key in parts therapy and brain spotting, where it's noticing before the trigger interleaves to actually trigger the previous trauma, that it's just matching and mirroring, that you realize there's going to be an internal thank you is all you say to cover your mouth inside to stop the storm, because what the person is doing is just akin to stapling a piece of paper, relatively innocuous, very innocent. Whatever they're doing could not deserve the level of intense charge they're about to receive. And what it is trauma is always fresh. So as soon as it matches and mirrors and you don't catch the interleave and they match, that person now caused your trauma. And there's your devil's trick.
Yeah,
where then it unleashes. And then that's what we need to work on not doing.
Also, we have many entities present here. Okay, we have to
Right.
remember that when it's just two people, you have the relationship between the two physical people, then the relationship between me and the unconscious of that other person.
Mhm.
Then there's a relationship between me and my unconscious. And then there's a relationship between the unconscious and the unconscious. Okay.
Right.
And that goes both ways. So that's 6 relationships just between two people.
Right.
And then when we have a group, even this small group of 8, we have many, many different entities that are interacting all the time.
Right.
And, that's a valid teaching from C.G. Jung.
Well, and then you're a really excellent air traffic controller. You kind of keep us from crashing into each other midair.
I'm not so sure I succeeded tonight. But
well, sometimes you're telling us we need a new plane, and we're like, oh no. So
yeah. So Raquel, I'm
Yeah.
sorry that I let it go on so long tonight. That was a shortcoming of what I did in the incident, and certainly
That's okay. I think that what happened was what had to happen for all of us, because otherwise we would not have the discussion. And I think this is important for all of us.
Yeah, that's probably true. Okay, well, thank you all for being here tonight. Next week, we will try to do the 5th Tarot, or I will try to do a presentation about my ideas about the 5th Tarot, and I may call upon a couple of you for ideas. I mean, I think I'm fairly clear about the court cards, but I'm less clear about the numerical cards, and I have the sense in this particular deck that they have forced it.
I was just going to say, there's a places where they dropped the ball because they were trying too hard to fit the mold they started with instead of creating their own nature with the 5th suit. I mean, it's across the board. I see it out of nowhere in multiple cards. I'd love to chat at some point this week, because that I couldn't agree more. Noble effort, but it's
I mean, I'm very, you can tell the pioneers by the arrows in their chests, and I think I think you can we can really appreciate this deck for its beautiful imagery in the major arcana particularly. And in some of the minor arcana as well. So there is beautiful imagery in it, and there's a lot of wisdom in it. So it's worth it's worth having both this, the book, and the deck. Okay, which is 2 separate things. So it's not cheap, but there's a lot of wisdom there, and certainly I'm not the guy to paint a new tarot deck. I tried at one point to get Tim Holmes interested, but he's not going to go that way, it doesn't appear. And so we need to find some people that are moved to do something new in the field of tarot, and I think the time has come for that. And there's plenty of room. Okay, there are thousands of tarot decks, and a lot of them are making money. And so,
and there's been a real surge in the last 18 months, even before pandemic. It's there has. I know friends of mine who are in my deck is mass market, and I actually got a royalty check this year. So I can't say I've sold under 100 now. So
well, the artist who drew all the costumes for the production that I created, so all the characters are there, and they're all new and different. It's just there's no background or anything. It's just the characters, the suits, the king, the queen, the page, and the major arcana. Plus,
are they based
actually
on
plus probably the fifth would be the third, how I utilized it. Okay.
Say it again. I'm sorry. I didn't follow.
Well, in my play, which is a musical, okay, well, this is how I treated it. There's 3 scenes, right? In the last scene, which is Stairway to Heaven, that's the song. They all look the same, and they have a number up here. The numbers 1 through 22. So they all turn, because in reality, there's an initiate, a neophyte that goes through the whole thing.
Right.
And it goes and it lives through all the major arcanas, create the world as well as the individuals. So I give life to both the world and what's going on, as well as the character.
I really want to get this produced, Gilda, but
So at the end, when the initiate punches, well, King Midas off his throne because he has turned everyone to gold, or the dancers freeze. Then the third part begins. He goes through a portal, like he went through the portal after card number 10, right? The first 10 is one portal, the second is another, and it is exactly how the tarot works. First, you go through all these experiences, and in the second part, you go through the experience already knowing, because you've already had all the experiences in the first part. So now you have knowledge, and then you collect the cup, the sword, and these different things. And at the end, all of it is released because it's the world, right? All of them are the willies are the corners of the tarot card world. They've been there all along also, plus the one in the center. What happens is the male and female got separated along the way, and at the end they unite.
Yeah. Did you have a budget for producing this? I mean, I'd just like to have orders of magnitude, what you think it would cost to produce.
I'll have to, I don't remember. I probably did. And I took it all the way to holding auditions for dancers. And I was going to hold the first scene, to show, possible investors. But you have to pay dancers. And by that time, that was it. I had done everything prior to that.
Well,
including the dancing, the choreography.
Give it a little thought, Gilda. Just don't waste a lot of time, because I'm broke right now.
No, but
like everyone. But
I can send you a copy of it.
Yeah,
get the right amount of comments.
Thank you to our UK followers who are at 4:40 in the morning, and Raquel, who's at 1:42 in the morning.
So I thought, the artist, our Cuban artist painted it. He's Cuban American, and they're really cool.
Okay, so what I wanted to say to you though is, I'm in general principle impressed with your thought, your idea here, and
it's been shelved for many years.
Well, that's all right. I mean, these things.
They're dust rags. They're dust rags.
It's actually, but Gilda, it's actually alive, right? Because now we know about it, and now we're talking about it. Okay.
So maybe putting it in a book, and then whomever can take it.
No, I'm not. I wouldn't say that necessarily, but because I don't want to make it another dead thing. Okay.
No.
Enough of logos, right? But
for you for free. I'm not.
But the reason I mention it, the reason I mention it is that I rub elbows with people that could afford to do something like that and might get engaged at some point. It's pure happenstance luck if it happens, but
it reminded me of the fifth. I mentioned it because it reminded me of the fifth suit, because it actually takes all of it and transcends it into where they all look the same, but it's inclusive, and then it becomes a number instead of a character.
I
Okay,
see.
instead of 15 being the devil or this or that, at the end they're just numbers,
I
and
see.
they all look the same except for, and then there's the 5 of the universe. The 3
Wonderful.
willies, the male and the female, that were separated throughout after the fight with strength and the chariot, right?
Mhm.
So they were separated, and then at the end they come together.
That's pretty awesome. I mean, you're reminding
Oh,
me.
but
of-
there's details about it that are very, very, very.
You're reminding me
give
of
you all the details.
Faustus.
Yes.
Well, you
Well,
don't-
yeah, I
no,
was going to
don't-
say it's this morning. I just wrote something in an article I'm working on in general, but it just popped up the enantiodromia of the chariot. The marriage, the harmony of the opposites that fuels the chariot. And so, right when you were saying that, I'm going, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, so it
Yeah.
begins all from an egg, and they're imagine it's all Led Zeppelin music, all the great ambience music that they had, and then it's born, and it takes you mate the whole thing, and then you go to the second part, which after the hangman, you already know because you've already had the experience.
Well,
So
times
go
you can
through
get
it's the
them
second
to
part.
do it. You
Well,
can
the
get them
second-
to actually perform the parts. I mean, get Jimmy Page, and
Oh, yeah, at that time I
got a
tried-
little time.
Yeah, at that time I've sent him all kinds of things, and he has there's music also that he used, for example, in the movie Death Wish 2. He
Mhm.
wrote the score, the music for it, very eerie. What makes the movie is actually
The
that
music,
theme, the
yeah.
theme of this very eerie theme which he wrote. And so he definitely has the material. And I listened to it, and I created it an opera. It's 3 scenes. The
Mhm.
tarot is the story of tarot. The story
Yeah,
of life.
it's
a
gotta be
story of
done.
life.
Yeah.
At that time, they used to say all sorts of things, but they did similar things in Joffrey. And then afterwards, they did Tammy by the Who? Tommy. By
Tommy.
the Who? They did it on Broadway. Afterwards, after I had passed that around forevermore, and that was the only thing that ever came into using modern music in a set of an operatic kind of setup.
All right, guys, I've had all I can take. I'm checking out.
Yeah,
All righty.
me too.
So, all right.
It's
Blessings.
a late
Good night.
night, but
I'm going to make like Santa Claus and leave your presents.
yeah,
Okay.
we'll talk. We'll talk.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Good night, everybody.
Anyway, I
Night.
need your help.
Good night. I'm
Good
leaving
night.
too. Bye-bye.
You'll have it.
Bye.
Good
I hope to
night.
join you soon.
Okay, good.
So I have
All
one.
right.
Good
night.
night, Raquel. Thank you for
What
being
happens
here.
from 7 to 8?
Oh, but between 7 and 8, we get together. It's not recorded.
Okay.
And we kind of strategize about what we're going to do that night, make sure we got our ducks in a row, or if we don't have any ducks, that we go get some to make them in a row
And so you can see how well we planned tonight.
tonight. I think
Impressed with everyone's stamina. I'm like, wow, yeah, you guys. It's
We've been at it since 7, so this is
thanks for being here.
5-hour
I'm
session.
gonna come back. I'll try to be a little more prepared next time. I'll look at the I'll order that 5th suit,
Yep.
5th tarot and all that.
It might help to have a few other people comment on it. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I'd
Good.
order it sooner than later. So my deck goes in and out of stock, but just because it's lower selling. But theirs is more limited quantity. So like Skip got really lucky when he ordered them for all of us because they came pretty quick. But I
Wow.
think even Skip's took a while to get.
Okay, I'll go ahead and order that, and I'll order yours too. That's very cool. So,
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'll see y'all again.
Yeah.